There's old Jamie. How you doing? Good morning.
Good morning. Buenos dias.
Buenos dias. I can say Akoshi.
Agoshi. Ya te habene.
Yeah, I know those two too. Yate Hagona and Akoshi. And there's one that my husband tells me
Just
when I
don't
used to
make any
tickle him.
mistakes today, Jamie.
No mistakes.
No, don't make any mistakes.
I found him. I thought something had changed.
Got 2 pins. Cheers.
Good morning, Peter.
Morning.
You had a nice Christmas.
I did.
That's good.
Just stayed here.
Hey, Kristen.
Hey,
How you doing?
one step above death.
One more meeting this morning, I see. I watched you online.
Peter told Christmas. We're all counting on you.
Well,
We'll see.
not bad. 10 items. Huh?
No. Should be able to get through those pretty good. Depends on how much comment you have on your public hearings.
Hey, we had a full house. Not full.
Yeah.
We had probably 10 people show up.
This morning, was it?
Only one made a comment.
Do you know
Huh.
one thing we need to, Kristen? We need to have people talk close to the microphone,
Is this
especially
mine?
when the heater's going on. It's kind of hard. There's people in the back that couldn't hear very good. And so
The
we can
microphones
hear
are
you
muted.
because you are close, but when they're talking, and so I don't know how we can do that, but
Well, we had them at the podium.
yeah.
I
But
don't know.
over here, when you guys are trying to just, when you making comments and things like that, but not critical, just somebody was saying they couldn't hear, so.
Oh, that's much better.
test 1, 2. Okay. Are we up and running and ready to go?
Mhm.
Yeah. No, not yet. Maybe.
Yes, she owns it. Good.
Okay.
We're good?
Yeah. I think we're ready.
All right, then. Well, good morning, everyone, and good morning to all those that are listening to us online. Merry Christmas, and I think we're coming up to a new year, so tomorrow's New Year's Eve. But welcome. Today is our Board of Commissioners meeting, our final one for the month of December. So calling this meeting to order at 11:04 a.m. We'll go ahead and move on with our agenda to roll call. Commissioner Stubbs,
Here.
Commissioner Adams,
Here.
Commissioner Harvey. I'm here. 3, we're full quorum today, so thank you everyone for being here. We'll go ahead and move on to our next item, the invocation. Anyone feeling special today?
I'll do it.
All right, Commissioner Adams, appreciate you.
It's the last chance you get to pick on me. Dear Father in heaven, as we come before thee as county commissioners and staff and public in San Juan County, Utah, we ask thee to bless us this day, that our commission meeting will run effectively and that we'll make decisions which will be in the best interest of the public. We're grateful for the opportunity we have to serve and be of service. We ask you to protect all of our employees as they go to work, and some in harm's way, that they'll have a special protection on them. We're grateful for all of our citizens and ask you to watch over and protect them. Inasmuch as we need the moisture so badly, we pray that thou would grant this blessing to come to our land, that we get the snowpack that we need this winter, and get the snow on the fields so that our grass will grow and our crops will grow, and we'll be able to prosper here in the land. Heavenly Father, we're grateful especially for our administrator and his help here in the county building. We ask you to bless them, that they will be inspired in the decisions that they make. Father in heaven, we're grateful and thankful for the freedoms that we enjoy. We're grateful for being able to participate in a recent election, and ask you to bless those who are going to be coming into office, that they'll have inspiration in the things that they do and say, both nationally, statewide, and here in our county. We're grateful for all the beauties that surround us, for the land that we live in, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, let's go ahead and move to our Pledge of Allegiance, if you'll stand with us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you much for that.
Play bumper chair here.
Like to glide around in our chairs. Okay, moving on to our conflict of interest disclosure. Commissioners, not sure if you're able to review our agenda for today, but
I have none.
are there any conflicts for you?
I have no conflict either to declare.
Same with myself, no conflicts that I see. So, for the record, there are no conflicts for any of the commissioners for today's meeting or the agenda items. Okay, moving on to our public comment section. I'll go ahead and let Mac run us through this part. Mac?
Okay, it looks like there's nobody signed up here. We do have one public comment. Okay, we'll go ahead and take Kristen, and then there's nobody online. So.
If you raise your hand, you especially get to
I
comment.
didn't
Now,
know we
these
had
are
to
just-
sign up.
Public comments in general, we do have the public hearings later on as well.
So just public comment from my office. Feedback that I've gotten even this morning is the need for enforcement. And we are maxed out, and we really need to hire an additional code enforcement help officer, something. Time and time again, I hear from the community, well, what's the point if we're not going to enforce it? We just spent an entire year knocking out a new ordinance, new zoning maps, new use table. And if we do not follow through with enforcement, it was for naught. Then we might as well just not have it. And so we've been hanging by our shoestrings this year. I don't foresee a ton of time opening up on my agenda because now I have a lot of other stuff happening. So we need additional help badly.
Okay, with that,
I have a comment,
okay.
a public comment. I would, in light of the football game that happened Saturday night, I'd like to congratulate the BYU Cougars on winning the Alamo Bowl
So mean.
and performing such a good performance, representing all of the state of Utah, and just really happy to see that happen, Mac.
It was a good game.
Can I add to that comment? In my household, I'm not allowed to watch BYU game because every time I watch, they lose. So I was not watching. My husband, they are far ahead that you can come and watch. And the minute I sit down, they made the first touchdown and another touchdown, and I start getting nervous. I thought I'd leave the room. We're gonna lose the game. So, but it has been forever, and I think I can get University of Utah to pay me to watch BYU, so I can watch. No, anyway, it was a good game.
Us Cougar fans had to endure 10 years of abuse from guys like Mac, so we're taking advantage.
Oh.
Yeah.
It
Awesome.
won't happen anymore, Mac.
I know, dang it.
I'll be gone.
Okay, so we're done with public comments then.
Yep, that was it.
Any in line?
All right, moving on to our consent agenda items. Go ahead, Mac.
Okay, under our consent agenda item, you have the approval of $4,298.99 in small purchases, $1,725 for U.S. Travel Association for the San Juan County Visitors Services, then $2,573.99 for DJI Mavic 3 Classic, and a Lamont Waterlink Spin Touch Kit for San Juan Public Health Department. Item number 2 is the approval of the reappointment of Steve Simpson, Brant Hart, and Mike Yaros to the San Juan County Bluff Waterworks Board, and those are all 4-year terms. Item number 3 is the approval of the December 17th, 2024 Commission Work Meeting Minutes. And those, commissioners, are your consent agenda items today for approval.
Those don't go, okay, perfect.
Okay, all right, commissioners, 3 items for our consent agenda.
I make a motion that we make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Commissioner Stubbs to
And I'll
approve.
second that motion.
Second by Commissioner Adams. Okay. Any questions, commissioners, before we take a vote? Okay, hearing none, let's vote. All those in favor to approve?
Aye.
It's 3 in favor, unanimous approval for our consent agenda items. Moving on to our business and action items. Mac?
Okay, item number 4 here is consideration and ratification of the appointment of an interim director until the public health director can be appointed in accordance with Utah Code Chapter 26A-1-110. We've got our chairperson, Ron Skinner, here from San Juan County Public Health as well. This is basically ratification of their appointment. The Public Health Board met last week on the 26th. They had advertised it department-wide for letters of interest and resumes from any of the staff that wanted to be interim. They received 3 letters, of which they had gone through an interview process there internally and had selected Mike Moulton to be the interim director until we can fill that slot for the director position.
Does Ron want to say anything?
Ron?
Yes, thank you, Commissioners. Matt, just so that you know that I posted it 3 times at the health department. One on the light switch going out, one on the paper towel rack, because we always use that, and one on the blackboard. Then I visited with everybody and made them aware of we were posting this again. And I had 3 applications. The board come together on the 26th, the day after Christmas. We all met, and for 2 hours we went over everything. Each person, each application, and we came up with unanimously Mike Moulton to be the interim director. Any questions?
You didn't see any reason to appoint a second in command. I don't know what you call them.
Commissioner Adams, I think that when we get the new director in, he should promote that. And if I haven't visited with Mike or anything like that. If something came up, I'm sure that we, if he was going to be out of, that was one of the things we talked with Grant about, that he had to have a second person in charge, and Jimmy was there. And sometimes when you're gone out of the office, I know that we have email and all that other stuff, but sometimes it's good to have another person that everyone knows who's in charge. And the last week or so, I probably shouldn't have, but I kind of went down every day and let them know that I was there and if there was any problems. And that's, Commissioner Adams, that's kind of where we were at.
Good. I agree with you.
Commissioner Stubbs.
One of the concerns I have, because we were over $2 million in the budget this year, and we brought it down to only being $100 million. And so, and I know lots of departments need help, they need help, and maybe a time for us to kind of be creative in how we do that. I don't know, I just say that in case when somebody come and approach us for more money, we're gonna have to be a little bit more realistic.
Right.
In my family, when my girls went shopping, it was time for soup, And maybe somebody said to me, we've been eating soup for a long time. Well, maybe it's true, but it's kind of hard when you have to bring a budget from 2 million being over, and everybody had needs. We had needs for so many needs, but we are becoming poor by the hour sometimes, So I want people to know that we hear you, whoever needs things, but we have to rethink until we start generating more funds. We have to rethink how we can move forward.
One thing that I want you to know, as the chair, I will not leave, and I will be there for the budget hearings. And with the new person, when we hire them, I think that Mac and I've worked out a pretty good thing that says, budget-wise. But I want you to understand that in January, the board come together, and we're going to go over. We're going to get a copy of all the grants, all 60 of them, and we're going to pick in the board. We're going to pick 3 of them, where the person that wrote it comes in, where we're at with it, money-wise with it, and it'll be at the end. It'll say when it ends, and maybe we can help with some of that stuff. And I believe that I'm really proud of the board coming the day after Christmas. We had one person come 71 miles to be there, and this was not done lightly. Like I said, we were about 2 hours.
And I felt very confident after our last meeting with with you and Suzette Morris. I feel like we have made lots of progress, and I'm looking forward. I have worked with many grants, and I know the grants are very important that we keep our part of the deal, and I'm glad that the board's willing to do that, and I'm very optimistic about that things will work better.
Well, thank you. I know that only 3 grants every time. We're not going to get through all of them, but someone that works that has written a grant may come to us and say, I need to let you know what's going on. Mm-hmm. And maybe this will help with this. I'm hoping it will.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
But I will, as chair, if I can't make it, someone else will be to the meetings.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Adams?
Well, I hope you'll keep in mind how much the budget has increased over the last couple of years. And rather than ask the county for additional monies when hiring a new person, look at what you can do to reduce that budget back to 2022 levels. And then out of those reductions, maybe if there's a need for more money to hire a new director, look at ways you can cut your budget in order to maybe make some of those kind of decisions, because that's a huge increase over 2 years in that department. And So I appreciate you looking at each and every grant and asking for justification for them.
And I believe that I would work with the county administrator, and we already have on, the new person that's in
Right.
term. And when the new director comes in, I'm sure he's going to go back to whatever, and that's up to the county administrator on that. And it's been great working with you, Mac, on daily emails back and forth and everything. But maybe we can look at that, and Commissioner Adams, and come up with something we can help with, and please, like we talked about in our meeting, I understand budgets, and there's a need and there's a want in life, and I'd like to have a new truck, but I don't need it. So we need to look at that.
Right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Very good.
I think that's all I have to run my mouth about. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
All right, commissioners, got a recommendation?
I'll make a motion that we ratify the appointment of an interim director as directed by Ron Skinner, Chair of the San Juan County Public Health Board.
Okay, motion to amend with recognition of the Public Health Board Chair, Mike Moulton, as the interim director.
And I second that.
Seconded by Commissioner Stubbs. All right. Any other questions before we take a motion?
No.
Well, appreciate the leadership, Ron. Thank you very much for you and your board stepping up and really making things work. So thanks. Right. All those in favor to approve?
Aye.
That's 3 in favor, unanimous vote. Moving on to item number 5. Mac?
Okay, this is consideration and approval of an amendment to terminate the preschool development grant. PDG is what the acronym is for that. B-5 contract between the State of Utah Department of Health and Human Services and San Juan County for the final year of 2025. This is a 3-year grant through the Department of Public Health and Human Services, in which in those 3 years, this final year, it was discussed with the state that it'd be pretty difficult to complete all of the requirements for this grant. They had recommended a mutual termination of it, and so we had agreed, and that's what you have here before you today.
All right, commissioners.
I'd like to make a comment. Can I make a comment before I make a motion?
Go ahead, Commissioner Stubbs.
As an early childhood educator for about 30 years, this is one decision that's kind of hard. And it comes from when we write grants and we don't follow our part of the deal, we get to a situation like this. And it comes to us. And now we had to terminate this. And it's going to be lots of children. They're not going to have the program. And so whose fault is? It's our fault. So every time I have seen many grants come before us, and my question was always, how do we manage these grants? Because it takes time to manage grants. And so I know in the long run, this is the best, and it was suggested to us by the state. It's the best thing we can do so we can be able to reapply for the grant. If we end up forfeiting all the stuff, then we won't have a very good record to reapply. So that'd be one thing that probably will hear in the community, that we had decided to close an early childhood grant. And I want to make this comment so people know that it's not just our decision. We had to figure out how we can make a continue for us to be able to reapply for this grant. And so, I don't know if Commissioner Adams has any comments, but it's one of the hardest motion they're gonna make to accept this, because I know how much early childhood means for little children. With our early childhood programs, they start behind in the school programs, and they learn so many things in the early childhood education. And so, having said all this, I'm gonna make a motion to approve this.
Motion by Commissioner Stubbs to approve termination.
I'll make a second with a comment.
Second, Commissioner Adams. Go ahead.
Well, I understand how Commissioner Stubbs feels about early childhood. Apparently, we haven't been doing our part with this grant and haven't been reporting, haven't been managing the grant. I'm not sure that the early childhood population will even miss. They won't miss us doing nothing. If that makes any sense. If we're not doing anything and we're not reporting and we're not working with the state on it and we don't have a program really going, and the state is recommending that we terminate the last year of it rather than get any kind of a penalty, I don't think anybody's going to miss the fact that we don't have that grant. That's all I'm saying.
I think just to kind of follow into what Commissioner Adams is sharing and expressing, the state has been very generous. Department of Health and Human Services has expressed how they would like our county to be successful in being able to have opportunities for future grants. And it's the Department of Health and Human Services, and they're being really gracious and wanting the county to succeed with deliverables. And I think with the division working hand in hand with the county and looking at the best options, this was the best option for us. And it's also an experience I know that the board doesn't take lightly, because I think moving forward, reviewing what commitments have been made is critical, and knowing what to follow up on to make sure any services are being accomplished. That's going to be a new gain for our health board and our community. So with that being said, all those in favor to terminate, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's 3 in favor. Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item number 6.
Okay, item number 6 is consideration and approval of the notice of award for the San Juan County Cow Black Memorial Airport for pavement improvements to American Road Maintenance Incorporated for fiscal year 2025. This one here is, as we've gone through the design of the taxiway system itself and the pavement improvements that need to take place out at Cow Black, we had solicited for a contractor to give us a proposal for that maintenance project. The company American Road Maintenance was the most responsive proposal that we received, as well as the lowest costing proposal that was out there. And so we're asking you today to issue this notice of award to American Road Maintenance for that project of $141,100. As a reminder, this is a majority funded, 90% funded by the FAA, and then we share in a participation with the state of 5%. So each of us have 5% of the costs of the improvements in this.
There wasn't any local bidders
No,
interested?
no, surprisingly, and I don't know if it was just because it was a smaller project.
Wow.
We typically see one of our local vendors proposing for this, but they did not.
Wow.
I don't know if it's because of the state projects that are going on about the same time that are more lucrative in the county, and so they don't know if it was just a time capacity type thing, but this is the one that was the most responsive.
Okay.
All right. Notice of award.
Make a motion that we approve the notice of award to American Road Inc., Maintenance Inc. at the Cowback Airport.
Motion by Commissioner Adams to approve.
I'll second it.
Second by Commissioner Stubbs. Any other comments or questions, commissioners? Okay, being none, let's all vote in favor. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's 3 in favor. Unanimous approval for that notice of award. Moving on with our agenda, we're on to public hearings. This is for
Okay, this first one here is for the consideration and adoption of an ordinance replacing the existing subdivision ordinance and amendments with a new updated ordinance for subdivisions within the unincorporated areas of San Juan County, state of Utah. We have Kristen, our planning building administrator, that just got out of a meeting prior to this with the planning commission and some of the changes. So what you see in the packet and online is our new ordinance to replace. Out of this morning's meeting, we anticipated that there would probably be changes to that chapter 6 in that you have before you out of the meeting this morning. And so this morning there were changes that they did recommend making. The planning commission approved it. And then we have Kristen here to kind of go over those changes to chapter 6.
And this will fulfill the mandate by the state legislature that mandates that we adopt a new ordinance by the end of the year, right?
Correct. Yep. If you approve this today, then
So
this will
we're
make us
apologetic of pushing this onto you, Kristen, but we're just a pass through from the legislature. They're the ones that created the urgency.
It was a bill, House Bill 174, I think. We did that.
that Senate bill.
So do you want to present something?
Sure. I'll just present we had very minor changes this morning, mostly just for clarity of a few statements. The first one's there on page 46, section 5A. It's noted in red. The next page has one on section 6. That's the only one that really has any content to it. That we will also accept appeals from adversely affected property owners, not just the applicant. And that's it. The rest
So kind of give us a summary of why we're here and why these
why.
changes.
So there's been a lot of things, and I've seen it in my office since I began in December, with subdivisions not getting pushed through. They just kind of dead end. I had probably 25 subdivisions on my plate when I came in that were 2 and 3 years old. The state legislation, with a lot of developers in the mix, want to streamline this process. And so over this past year, there's been a few things put in place, such as turnaround time periods for our department to get it cranked back out. They've also put in a 4-cycle review limit. And so to help streamline this, it was mandated that this becomes an administrative process. And so that designates myself or whoever's in my position as planning administrator to be the approving body for both the preliminary and the final. It in many cases makes a lot of sense. I'm not a single person when we do this. I have a full plat review committee that meets together from the health department, roads department, surveyors, the attorneys, recorder's office. So even though it is my signature on it, it is the approval of our review committee. And everybody will still sign off on those plats before they're recorded. It just helps streamline the process, especially where so many of our subdivisions are very small. So this applies to anything under 10 lots. If you go over 10 lots, you get kicked into the plan unit development, where we have development agreements and road agreements and infrastructure improvement plans and all that. This was to try to keep subdivisions as simple as possible and get them in, get them out if people got them in order.
According to Jens Nielsen, a lawyer, this morning, he said that we will have opportunity to revise this. And so I just want to make sure that we do have that because, you know, this morning somebody pointed out some of the things. We may have somebody else that point out some things, you know, because
I believe we've addressed everything
Yeah.
that came out of public comment
yeah,
this
that's
morning.
what I mean. But
There were other comments for the land use ordinance as a whole, and we'll
Yeah,
address those
yeah.
as a whole.
and that's another. This is just for chapter 6. So, I like the idea of having an opportunity because in case we run into something that we can, it's not set in stone yet, but this is just to meet the requirement we need to meet for the state requirement. And so, and I know I have been to just probably 100% of the meetings, some just only part-time because I had other meetings to assess, but I know you guys have been working hard on this. We appreciate that, and it's not an easy thing. But we appreciate your work and the work of the commissioners, and they're volunteers. And
They
have
have
big
put in some time.
responsibilities. And so, anyway, so I just wanted to make that comment. So.
Any other questions on it?
I agree. I just feel bad that everything kind of came so fast because of this legislation and forced us to do something. But I do appreciate the help of USIP and others who kind of fine-tuned an ordinance that, you know, would be something that we could start with, and maybe,
I didn't.
I assume that you didn't work with them at all?
With
No.
Bart. Yeah, we worked with Bart.
Oh.
And so, yeah, Bart was instrumental in all of our land use
I
ordinance.
thought they had kind of a ordinance that kind of fit most of the rules.
It
They
was
did,
pretty handwritten.
Yeah, Bart had looked at. So the Utah League of Cities and Towns had an attorney who sponsored the bill, create kind of this land use subdivision ordinance for the cities, and UAC used that one as well on there. And so Bart had reviewed kind of what he had in his document and then compared it to what we had in ours, because we had been working on, I mean, here in less than half a month, we're looking at our entire land use. So we had all of these pieces in there, and then Bart just kind of mirrored the two and made it mesh to fit for San Juan County. And so Bart has been instrumental and looked at what
I was hoping we
what the
didn't have
League of
to
Cities
start from
Towns.
scratch.
we didn't. Well, we were already pretty
We
much
already
there.
had it written from before. The one thing I will say about this is we did know about this early on, and I was very blindsided by this. And I would appreciate it in the future if me and my planning commissioners aren't on such short notice. It was a rough week.
Yeah, to get this together and pull it together with Bart. And that was, we had kept on telling him, was like, we will have this done in January. Is that okay? And they're like, okay, that's fine. As long as you're working towards that, working towards the approval. But then when it came down at the end, when we heard that this could actually jeopardize funding, then that's when we were like, okay, we better have an emergency meeting and get everything lined up. And so somewhere behind the powers that may be behind the scenes, even in a review of the bill, there's nothing punitive. That if you don't have this passed by December 31st, that was mentioned in the bill. Bart looked through it, couldn't figure it out. But according to what we are hearing is, if we don't have this passed, then it could place jeopardy on other funds.
All right. Well,
You need to take comment from the public.
do we have any comments from the public regarding this ordinance? Anyone
Do
online?
we have anybody on it?
Still nobody online.
I make a motion, we come out of public hearing.
We got 4 other items.
I'll
Commissioner.
second.
I know, but we have to go into a public hearing
Okay.
for 4 different reasons.
Motion by Commissioner Adams to come out of public hearing mode. Seconded by Commissioner Stubbs. Okay, motion to come out of public hearing.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the ordinance replacing the existing subdivision and amendments with the new updated ordinance for subdivisions within the unincorporated areas of San Juan County, Utah.
Motion by Commissioner Adams to replace and adopt the new ordinance.
I'll second it
Seconded by Commissioner Stubbs.
with the understanding that we can revisit this necessary.
Okay, we've got a motion to adopt a new ordinance and replace. Okay, any other questions or comments before we take a vote? Okay, let's vote. All those in favor to approve the new ordinance? Aye.
Aye.
It's 3 in favor. Unanimous vote. So motion carries to adopt a new ordinance.
I'll make a
Next.
motion, we go into public hearing to consider the adoption of a resolution adopting the final adjustments to the 2024 San Juan County General Fund and related budgets.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Adams to move into public hearing for a resolution. Commissioner Stubbs, moving into public hearing mode.
Okay, I'll second it.
Seconded by Commissioner Stubbs. Okay, all those in favor to move to public hearing? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are now in public hearing mode. Item number 8.
Does this one work here? Okay. Yeah, why don't we I'll just stay up here and we'll talk. One thing, can you get my screen to show the budget as well? Or I guess I can just move over next to Sylvia here. Would that be easier if I just scoot over next to her?
Okay, I can move this.
It was in your email. Well, I was just. No, you don't have copies. I'll zoom in.
We'll do our best to zoom in. When talking about the 2024 budget, if you recall, we had a mid-year adjustment that we passed in September, I think, just to kind of look at where we think we might be. And now we're at the end of the year, just to kind of walk through our goals in our 2024 end of the year process. What we're hoping to do is really get as close to being on the nose as we can in terms of what we think we're going to be doing to close out the year. The good news is we were able to go through this after we had our last payroll, full week payroll, as well as our last full week's round of bills going out. So we think we're pretty close. We do still try to estimate a little bit of conservatism into our revenue lines here. We don't think we basically are just planning on getting the same amount of tax revenue that we received in prior year. If we get a little bit more, that will be nice, but we're just sort of kind of status quo there. See, where are we at here? I'm used to looking at the Polaris screen. Licenses and permits, again, it's about the steady. It's just a little bit down from what we thought it was going to be. Intergovernmental revenue, our our grants are up slightly. Actually, no, they're up more than $1 million. I'm sorry, I'm reading that wrong.
Peter, does that include PILT?
Yes,
you
that
know?
does include PILT.
That does include PILT.
But the
Okay.
big increase you're looking at is just as a county, we have a lot of grant revenue that comes in.
PILT comes in June or July, doesn't it?
It does,
Yeah.
and we already recorded that, so
Okay.
that's
All right.
already been absorbed. What we're going to see at the end of the year is really just going to be some reimbursements
Okay.
for some funding that we've already spent money on. We're not going to get any new sources of funds. We will get some
Just reimbursables.
reimbursables. I'm not. This schedule's not. Seems a little bit off to me. Where the intergovernmental revenue that's because we have revenue that we have. Sorry, I'm just trying to remind myself here. So some of our revenue we have to put into restricted balances, and we won't release those until we kind of close out the year. So if that looks large, there's like a $4 million gap there. It's because we've got about $4 million sitting in a restricted fund that we're going to release before we close books. That's why you see that big difference. Charges for services, again, we've already over, as we did this budget amendment, we're already over that. And then everything else is pretty static. There's not a whole lot of changes.
What about interest, Peter? Talk about that a little bit.
So that's just interest on our
It just says prior year to date, 529. We're budgeted 300,000, and we're expecting only 400, or is that
that was just so when we did this, we only had it through September.
okay?
And I knew that they'd had dropped interest rates a little bit in December, and I just
Yeah.
wanted to be conservative. And as
Okay.
you can see, just this morning, Glennis has already posted the interest through November. We've already surpassed what we budgeted
Okay.
for year end. So kind of the big picture is we're trying to plan a very conservative revenue budget for the end of the year so that we don't, get in trouble with predicting too much coming in and not having it come in. That's really sort of the idea there. And in some respects, you see, we're going to surpass that, but it's just good to be conservative.
Okay.
Moving on to expenditures, the big items to notice is, again, with an increase in grant revenue, you're going to see a commensurate increase with expenditures, almost at a 1-to-1. And so that's one reason why you see the uptick in what was planned versus what we believe we're going to end at the end of the year is because of additional grants coming in, and also spending grant revenue that we had anticipated that we were going to spend maybe in prior year or in future year. We ended up spending it in this year. So that's going to be the biggest reason why you see the change from 6 million to almost 6.5 million in general government. There is just for that, for increases in some grants, expenditures. Primarily, the big shift is in our economic development department. We had a lot of costs go in there, and related to some stuff out at the fairgrounds. And so that's really the big difference you're going to see, and that's why it's gone up by so much. Moving down to public safety.
Can I make a comment
Yeah,
on the
you bet.
commissioner budget?
Mm-hmm.
It looks like we increase a lot in the budget. It is just because in the past, the former commissioners, they didn't travel, they didn't go to conferences, things like that. And since then, like when we first started, we have some trainings we had to go. It's pretty much Commissioner Harvey and I were gone a lot. Those are required training. Anyway, so I just want to make I noticed that, so people always say, look at this commissioner making more money than before, but it's because, am I correct, Mac, with that?
So yeah, so part of these, and that's the difficulty with looking at the budget, is you're 97% complete with your budget, and we've placed in additional funds for travel, and just exactly what you're saying is some of the travel that the commission has had has been grant funded travel, and so we still have to show it in there, but up above it, we have to show it as an expense, but up above you also have grant revenue that offsets that travel in there. So you're still under your budget of what was approved for your annual budget, but yet we stuck a percentage in there so that you don't go over your budget in total operations. We still have a couple of reimbursables that have to come through and be paid out on there as well. So we should have enough in there to cover everything on the commission. But if you look at the previous years, that's why you kind of see that as there have been last year as well as this year, both have received grant funding travel awards in some of the contracts that you have. Did that answer your question?
Mm-hmm.
But there is a concern when you look at some of these as going over, take, for example, the administrative on there, I'm at 116%. Similar situation as the NACO grant that provides that offset on our travel. But it's something to keep in mind, and something we really need to watch for in the future is, if we're given a budget, trying to keep within that budget. So at the end of the year, we don't have to make these offset increases to the budget to make them whole.
And if you noticed, a lot of what we do is, we have a lot of budgets that anticipate making expenses, and then it just doesn't materialize. Maybe the grant didn't come in. Maybe they just didn't have time to get to that project. And so we reduce budgets in some respect to make up for some of the increases that come in at the end that weren't anticipated. Okay, so move down to public safety. There's that 2,000%. That's a small amount in general dollars. The bigger issue would be the one below that. We ended up purchasing a UTV search and rescue for the search and rescue a department, and it was paid out of essentially they sold a vehicle. So that's sort of why you see that big uptick there. But overall, we actually saw a decrease in public safety from what we thought we were going to get by mid-year. And so we got some savings there. Moving down to Parks, Rec, and Public Property. Some of those expenses again, Historical Commission, that was a grant-based expense that came in. We were a little over on our county fair. I think there was an issue with some infrastructure that had to be. We had the lights went goofy, and they had to do some mechanical work down there to get those up and running. So those weren't things that weren't anticipated that we ended up having to spend money on. So that's really the reason why you see that uptick and increase in Parks and Rec. Move down to community and economic development there. And there was a grant contract from one of Tammy's departments that ended up allowing us to increase our expenditure there that we didn't anticipate. One thing to notice about almost anything in aging, it's an in and out for the most part. These are expenditures that get reimbursed by the state through state grants. If we do have increases or decreases, it has to do with the abilities of the funding as well as our ability to perform on that funding. One of the departments that does a really good job of sort of managing the ins and outs of funding would be the aging department. And so that's overall you'll see a decrease, but you do have a couple of increases in a couple of different projects. In airport, there is quite a big increase at Cal Black, but again, that has to do with some funding that came in for the runway out there to redo the blacktop. That's going to be reimbursed by a state funding, and that will get recognized in 2024. So that really explains sort of the intent here. One of the things I do want to point out is that at mid-year we thought we were going to need close to I think it was 6 or 7 from LACTF funding to make our budget to come into compliance with our budget this year, and we've been able to drop that to 1.15 based upon just some savings and some costs that didn't come in. And so that's sort of some good news for 2024. But that's all it is on the general fund. Do you have any questions about the general fund before we go on to the others?
I'm still just blown away at what the county has to pay for health insurance for our employees. It's just, I mean, I look at my year-end pay stub and what they have to pay for just my health insurance, and I hope Medicaid's ready for me.
And just as a reminder, that will go down 2024. You still were realizing back payments through Blue Cross Blue Shield and PHP at the same time. So you had 2 entities that we were paying on. They're pretty much done with all of their claims on Blue Cross Blue Shield. So now going forward, all you will see is the PHP costs on there. And so we had to cover kind of back payments for a year, basically what it was.
I think 25 will be a really good year to kind of watch and see what our baseline is going to be on that health insurance cost. Because the last couple of years it was mixed in. Okay, let's go down to the other funds.
Is that really showing us that we're going to pay? We are going to pay nearly $1 million less on health insurance, where it says undistributed benefits, 2.6 to 1.7.
Yeah, about $900,000 less.
We're going to nearly make.
Because of that overlap.
Yeah.
Anytime we can save $1 million, let's do it.
So last year's, the prior year to date was 2.6. This year we're 1.7.
Wow.
But we still feel that it's high because you still had Blue Cross Blue Shield.
And I think we've got another. I think I got $100,000 outstanding in there. So that will on the year to date that's going to go up. But the budget in there, that kind of shows you where we think we're going to land.
2.6 down to 1.7, just in the insurance change. It was a good move, although it hurts on the.
I appreciate you doing that on the year I leave.
All right, let's move down.
Yeah, it makes it look good, like you had a really good commissioner.
Yeah.
So the big thing I want to point out here in the B Road Fund is we did some reclassification of revenue. The B Road is an amount that comes from the state, and we were sort of conflating our savings from our PTIF account into that B Road, and it's all subsumed in the intergovernmental revenue line there, and so that drops substantially because we're trying to reclassify it in the right spot, and that right spot is in contributions and transfers. And so our savings amount gets put in there as a contribution instead of B Road revenue from the state. So overall, we anticipate 110.6% increase in our revenue compared to what we thought we were going to get, which is good. And if you go down to our expenditures, there's a commensurate expense related to that revenue uptick. And overall, we think we're going to do about $86,000 to the positive in that particular fund before year end. Going on down, this is the MBA. This is where we do our. This is where we handle all of our loans, capital loans, interest payments. So this is just sort of an in and out. It looks like we had is this 24, right? I think we should have taken out that.
6 million.
Yeah, I don't know how it got back in.
Yeah.
It's just an in and out, but we anticipated earlier in the year that was going to come in. We're going to push that up to 25, so I'm probably going to have to change that before we adopt it, if that's okay. Just have that pulled out. It won't change the bottom line, but it does it'll just let us know that. So that's change number one. If we can make that adoption before we vote, we'll pull that out. I thought it was already taken out. I don't know why it got back in there. Okay, so on to the health fund. The health fund, we talked about it a little bit earlier today. Most of it's kind of an in and out with the state in terms of what we end up spending as a county versus what we get reimbursed. That's why it's kind of established in its own fund. We do end up paying our portion of the costs of the health fund, and so increases do end up affecting the county on a percentage basis. So that's just sort of explaining the difference. But you'll see there isn't a whole lot of change on the net amount there. It's fairly stable for what we predicted in the budget versus the end of the year. Any questions on those last two or three funds before we go down?
No.
Okay. EMS, our anticipated revenue was up more than we thought it was going to be, which is good. And there's been some changes in the way we've done business there, and I think we're starting to get a little bit of that trickling in. But as you'll see, there's an increase in revenue, and then in the charges for services line, we did have probably should add that grant revenue in there, but we'll just leave it in. It's fine. Overall, we're anticipating. That's a little odd. I don't know why that's showing up there. It should be 50,000 in there. Let me make a switch in there so we make sure that we're required by our EMS to have a net revenue of 50,000 to help make up a deficit we have in there.
I think the deficit goes into another account.
Does it?
It goes into your tort liability.
Maybe it's just so I'm not reading it right. So,
and we use the general fund to shore up tort liability for the deficit.
okay. All right.
Be on this
I'm probably not. I'm used to looking at a different schedule.
Yeah. No.
This is all.
These are weird.
These are all. What do you call it? Summary schedules. So we have a new fund this year. We're trying to isolate our jail costs for some of our inmates. They get some revenue. We're trying to isolate that to make sure that what they get, the revenue, the money that they receive for services gets spent for them and not get commingled with our operating fund. And so that just shows an in and out. Right now we're anticipating about 125. Looks like there's a little bit more that's come in, but that'll sort of that'll just be an in and out, and that will adjust as we finalize our year end.
These are our commissary expenditures.
Yeah,
for out of this account now. So this is kind of new to you, as seeing we've always had the line item for commissary, and now we've created its own fund, and we have the treasurer's office and clerk auditors watching this the ins and outs of this fund.
Yeah, this is kind of a new thing for us. Just to make those isolated so we're not commingling at all. All right, scroll on down to the next. This is the CRA fund for the public's purposes. Is it's a redevelopment agency down, like, is it by Bluff?
Yeah,
Is that where it is? And this is just a way to capture some of where the tax revenue is supposed to go towards that. And that will, we haven't done the transfers yet, so you'll see that come up in the current year to date before we close the books. Scroll down. This is our capital budget. And the capital budget here reflects items that we're going to spend money on related to all of our large infrastructure projects. A lot of this is grant funded. Again, we need to pull that $26 million out, because we're going to have that next year. We did have it budgeted in here for this year. But a lot of these funds are ARPA funded. Then we have other grant funds that have come in to help us with some of these projects. Our budget the nice thing about this budget is it's allowed to roll. So at the end of the year, if we didn't spend money on something, we can put it into the next year to spend money on those projects as we anticipate, getting those accomplished and getting those realized as assets on our books. So this is just sort of a way to track that from a capital standpoint. Go down. Operational report for road capital. This is just part of a way that we capture some revenue from our savings account to help pay for some of our roads costs. We'll get that sort of trued up before the end of the year. Our landfill budget, we actually had a pretty good year this year. We did plan a little bit low. He didn't know quite what was going to come in, but as you can see, we're already almost $200,000 over where he predicted. But with extra income to run the landfill, that usually also means a lot of extra costs to keep that extra stuff coming into the landfill to be able to process it. And so you'll see that sort of difference in, and then we have some non-operating income and expenses sort of round that out. Tort liability, you'll see that's gone up quite a bit. We've had a lot of extra increases in our USIP funds. And so you'll see that we don't have a lot of control over this. We just want to make sure that we cover it. And that usually means that we have to transfer some money from the operating fund to cover that. And so you'll see that in there as well, in the contributions and transfers. We just want to keep that whole for the end of the year. Tax stability is their savings on our tax. We basically put some money in a savings account, and we can get to recognize the interest on that. That's supposed to help us backfill any gaps we have in our revenue. That's what this records. This records the interest off of that savings account, and then it gets transferred into the operating fund for us to use. And so you can see it's already higher than what we think. So I'm going to have to, I think there's a mistake in there on the interest. I'm working with Glennis on that. We just had this happen this morning, so I've got to go in and talk with her about that. But for now, this will work. I think we're going to be higher than that before the end of the year. Continue down. And then our library fund. This is one of our more stable funds. You won't see a ton of differences with the overall. Some of the lines changed. There's some reclassification. But that intergovernmental revenue, they've had more. They've had some more grants come in they didn't anticipate, but they're not total dollar amounts. Is not going to be a ton to change everything overall. So just going to look at your total revenue. We're down a little bit from what we thought we were going to be, and
Is that because of the tax that they have, or
well, just we've already recorded the taxes year to date. That 440 is accurate.
yeah?
We're going to get a second round, so we might get a little bit more in there.
Okay.
But I've just kept it low just to be conservative.
Same with the interest earnings.
So that will go up a little bit. The interest earnings will go up a little bit more because we have one more month in there. This is a tight fund, so we do like to keep a little bit more tabs on it, just to make sure that we cover ourselves. It's because there's not a lot of wiggle room.
We are transferring into this budget as well.
Yeah, that 232 there is that is
How much? Matt?
the amount really kind of that we're subsidizing that fund.
132,000.
So that's it for our
2024.
2024. And this is this is just the detail. So if you had any questions about, particular line items within each summary, we could dig into it. But that's just essentially for the ability to be transparent about the details of underneath each one of these summary reports. Are there any other questions about 2024?
Do we have any public comments, either from our room or from the internet, from our Zoom
I
link?
don't think anybody's on.
Nobody.
All right. Well, if not, then
I'd like to make a motion to come out of public hearing this time.
a motion by Commissioner Adams to exit public hearing.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the final adjustments to the 2024 San Juan County General Fund and related budgets with the changes that Peter had mentioned he needed to make to that budget, but with those changes.
Yeah, there's a $26 million
Yeah.
shift. We're going to be pushing that to 25. So let's take it out of
Yeah.
24.
Anyway, with
That's
those
the big one.
with those changes included in my motion.
Okay.
I'll second the motion.
Motion by Commissioner Adams to approve with recommended changes. Seconded by Commissioner Stubbs. Any other comments?
No, thank you for the hard work. I mean, this has been a very intense work with the budget this time. It just nice to see the numbers getting lower and lower. I guess that's for the 2025, they want to see the numbers lower and lower, but anyway. So I'll make a second motion, I mean.
Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and take a vote to approve with the recommended changes. All those in favor?
Aye.
It's 3 in favor, unanimous approval.
I'd like to make a motion to go into public hearing to consider the adoption of the 2025 San Juan County General Fund and related budgets.
Motion by Commissioner Adams to move into public hearing.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Commissioner Stubbs. Okay, we are now in public hearing. Item number 10.
Okay, Peter.
Great. Well, while the last year's budget was essentially just trying to kind of true things up and make sure that we know where we're going to land, this one's got a little more proactivity in it. A lot of, we're working on some assumptions, and we're trying to find ways to live within our means just a little bit better. And so hopefully I can walk through that and kind of show you what we're looking at. In terms of taxes, we are not, again, the best thing to do is just to sort of estimate a flat sort of carryover, because we don't know where we're going to land. So we're looking at our 25 adopted budget essentially is the same as what we actualized in 2023. Although we do believe we will get some more, but we're going to be conservative.
It looks like the biggest change is in our TRT tax.
Yes, and so I wanted to point out that we are estimating a drop in our TRT tax, primarily related to the sale of the Goldings property to the Navajo Nation. And so that's going to eat away at about $300,000. And so we have to sort of keep that into consideration when we look going forward. In our
Have we received any official notification there, Peter, on TRT from Gouldings?
No.
Not at this point, but we're just trying to plan for it.
correct,
Okay.
we're planning for not having it.
Okay.
So just to be prudent with our budget to ensure that we're being conservative.
If you look at the 2024 actual on there, the 1.5, we still haven't closed out the year for TRT collection. The Navajo Nation has yet to pay their TRT. They went to a quarter by quarter basis instead of monthly.
Okay.
And they still haven't paid last quarter. And so I don't know if they'll catch it up here at the end of the year or not. But the state tax commission, they really don't get us the numbers until after our end of the year. And so we go back and true that up. So
If
that-
we don't pay that,
No,
does the
no
state
change.
make that notification or does the county?
the state, they're tracking it
It's
on
all
their side.
the state tracking?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, and again, back to the taxes. I really do believe we'll get more than 6.8, but we do want to just
Yeah.
plan for that conservative scenario. Licenses and permits don't change a whole lot. We've dipped just a little tiny bit, just to be conservative. Again, that's just,
So marriages are down?
God, I thought so until last week. That's feast and famine down there. It doesn't apply to a lot to the budget, but it
Yeah.
anyway. Okay, so moving down to intergovernmental revenue, the biggest thing you're going to notice there is we're anticipating a $800,000 grant for Cal Black. That's going to be recorded in those other federal grants there. And you'll see later on that will come out on the bottom as well under expenditures. And so there's just a lot of business that's happening down in the that Cal Black area.
Say that, wait just a minute, Mac. So I'm looking at payment in lieu.
That one will be close.
We think that might go up a little bit.
So it's been at 1.7 is historically what we've received from them. It went up this last year to 1.9. We were able to
Okay.
receive the full PILT payment. And this is kind of an anticipation of it is, as commissioners, as you go back to NACO, and this is one of the things that we continue to argue with Congress, that PILT payment really, the federal government really needs to start kicking in more.
Quit paying lower than
Quit-
Greenbelt.
Yes,
But we got 1.9 this year.
yeah, so
Yeah.
we're anticipating.
So I just put the
1.9.
same amount in.
We're hoping that comes in at 1.9, that they fully fund
Okay.
PILT again, but we'll
So-
have to see.
Yep. So that's the other thing to kind of note too, again, is that LATCF revenue. I wanted to talk a little bit more about that in the 25 budget. In the 24 budget, we needed to take 1.15 million to keep ourselves afloat. This revenue is federal grant revenue that's unrestricted, that was set aside by the Biden administration to help counties be able to shore up costs related to the pandemic. But we can use it essentially for anything other than, I think, some legal costs, and we can't pay off debts with it.
It wasn't designated then for infrastructure, huh?
Not necessarily.
For some
no.
reason I had that in my mind.
No, they had some other bills that did that. This one's just really super loose.
Okay.
We're trying to hold that under $1 million. because we have a limited amount of that, and it will eventually expire. And the other thing that I get a little bit concerned about is with our federal government looking at ways to reduce the deficit, there may be efforts in the 25 budget to claw that back
Right.
to help shore up deficits in the federal government. And so we're trying to, our goal is by 26, 27, we can get to a place where we don't need to rely upon that to make ourselves, to keep ourselves in the black. The other thing to kind of talk about on this too with intergovernmental revenue is there's good news and there's bad news with respect to where we're at with our budget deficit. The bad news is that we do need federal monies to undershore our county budget, and that's definitely true. But the good news is, if you're to extract all of the grant-based one-time costs, things that have been dependent upon federal money, state money in order to operate, that are sort of project costs or one-time costs, that deficit shrinks. So we're not in as bad of a shape as we think we are. There isn't necessarily a $2 million gap. A lot of those funds go towards things that we pay one time for. And so we do have a functional deficit to, I'm going to say anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million we've got to look at really seriously in the next couple of years to figure out how to make up that gap. It's not $2 million. It's closer to anywhere from $500,000 to $1 million. Does that make sense?
Well, Peter, when you live in a county that's as big as ours, and you only have 8% of the county that can actually be taxed, I don't think it's unfair to expect the federal government to be giving us all they can, because their PILT payments are less than anybody that pays taxes in the county. Any property owner, and they've got the most property. So
that's a real good point. Yeah, we just are unsure about, federal funding comes and federal funding goes, but we want to get to a place where we can, if it all dried up tomorrow, where would we be and what would our functional deficit be at? And that's just good to sort of point that out, that we would still be short,
I think if the federal government paid the PILT rate on the amount of property that they have, that they manage or they own or whatever, I think the PILT payment we'd be getting would be $5 or $6 million a year. Much more than we are getting. So
that would be a nice thing. That would be a nice solution to have, wouldn't it?
Well, that's one thing that I know NACO and the state are asking the federal government to do is, pay your fair share.
There you go.
Pay your equal share.
A couple of other things to note is that in the 25 budget, we've done some reclassification of some charges. A lot of our other funds rely very heavily upon services from the general fund. And in particular, we looked at 4 different departments that provide services essentially for those funds, and that is HR, IT, administration, and the clerk auditor's office. And so through sort of a pro rata effect, we're going to look at trying to capture some of those charges from our other funds to show a more accurate representation of the costs to have those funds operate. And so we are planning a $300,000 increase to what we call governmental fees that are just going to be charges to our other funds. Now, some of our funds can afford to pay that and will help our general fund, and some of them can't. For those that can't, we're still going to charge them, but then we'll true them up on the bottom by transferring more money to support them to keep them whole. And so you'll see that in this year's budget as well, or this next year's budget as well. But all in all, about $150,000 to the operating fund gets is a benefit to the operating fund. That's a net positive to that fund.
Can I make a comment? You're talking about, lots of time people say to me, let's don't rely on government funds. Okay. In San Juan County, just by what Commissioner Adams said, we do rely because they're using the land. Another thing, I've been working on a grant and I reading a report that was done in April 2021 by Science Bank. It's called the Leakage Fund Study. And in this study, the only thing that we can make money in San Juan County as far as business is gasoline, accommodation. There was 4 things. And take a guess how much money goes out of the county, people purchasing outside other communities. Close to $90 million. It gets done from the county. So, and I talked about this one time about the college. The college were poor, and somebody came and said, circulate your dollars within the college. Instead of giving students cash money, they went and spent someplace else. We kept give them book scholarships so they can use the bookstore. So I know that we don't have everything that people buy out of town, but somehow we have to figure out how we can circulate some of the dollar within the communities, and so that we can, and that's one area where we need to create more small business and support more things and look for opportunities to spend, even if we just spend a little percentage of what we make in the county, it would help if everybody did that. And not to regulate where people spend their money, but it's a principle that works when you can circulate the dollar within the communities. And that's one way where we don't get revenues, is not having that many businesses that we can spend our money on. So each of us, well, some people already have businesses. Each of us need to start a business and.
There you go.
And local. And
Well,
that's-
I was told by a child at Calvin Black when he was commissioner. We didn't have mortuary. We didn't have hardly anything, and he created a mortuary, some restaurant. I mean, he did all this stuff, a hotel, in order to keep some of the dollar. And so I am, thinking that maybe we can be creative with some other ways to be able to capture those dollars that are leaving us. And
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that I know I've talked with Mac about is looking at some different ways to make that gap up. That hopefully we can be able to address that in our either budget amendments or adjustments for 26 and beyond. Okay, so there are only a couple things I wanted to mention here in the revenue was we did the inmate revenue. That what happens is we get revenue from the state for housing inmates at the jail. I just got off the phone got off an email with Lieutenant Young, and we kind of walked through. There's quite a sizable increase in what is termed the sex offender contract, and there's just some adjustments between how we're recording that revenue, and you'll see that difference there. All in all, we anticipate a $200,000 bump in that revenue from the state, and that will come down below because I think we got to put that back into our expenses, and it's just something I just found out about, and so I'm going to ask that down there below. We'll get there. So that's really it for revenue. We're asking for 8.8 to be budgeted for revenue in our budget in 2025. And then we'll move on here to expenditures in our operating budget. some assumptions about our expenditures. We are not budgeting for any increases in salary costs in this budget. They stay the same. There were no net new positions budgeted in this budget. There's sort of an in and an out, as I'll explain in a second here. But those are sort of the assumptions you can make in terms of what we're looking at for 25. The planning and zoning and building inspection departments collapsed to under one head. So that's all going to be now under planning and zoning. So when you go there, you'll see quite a sizable increase in the budget for planning and zoning, but that's because the building inspection department is rolling up under there in one head. We are anticipating that some of our legal costs go down a little bit because we have some high-profile court cases that are coming to an end. Some of our current lawsuits that were related to planning and zoning are also coming to an end. So we don't think that's going to carry over. So you'll see a little bit of a drop in those legal fees and public defender fees. Our election budget decreases slightly because we are going to be running smaller municipal election footprints and won't have the same amount of cost needs for elections. A lot of our election costs get undergirded by the state. The state pays for those. And so you'll see a budget drop there. We are anticipating one less position for now in the recorder's office, and then one position for IT. And those are the only two that I could see. Mac, did I get that right?
So the position from the recorders, we lost a position in the recorder's office, and that moved over into the surveyor's
office.
budget. And so it was basically just a transfer of
Okay.
positions within.
That's not true. We lost a full position.
Correct. Yes, but that transfers the money, the budget side of it.
No.
So the budget
We
doesn't
lost two
transfer.
people, right?
So you have 3 positions in the recorder's office. We're taking you down to 2 positions. So the recorder and 2 positions. That additional position is transferred over into the surveyor's budget, not the personnel or the title or anything, just the budget is transferred over there. So
Can I make a comment?
you betcha. Yep.
Thing. So in other words, I've lost an entire FTE,
Correct.
full-time equivalent. In the future, if that happens, I would like a conversation. Like, nobody even talked to me about my workload. Nobody asked me if that was gonna be okay. It's just cut.
That was a conversation that
I
you
thought
had
we
with
had a
Commissioner
conversation.
Stubbs and I. Yeah,
Yes,
and
you,
you.
the 3 of us.
Okay, but the decision had already been made. I found
So it's
out-
reflective in
so
the budget.
The way I found out about it is I went to Crystal and I said, will you please open my position? And she said, oh, sorry, you're gonna have to talk to Mac about that. He shut your position down.
No.
And then when we talked, I said, okay, I can live with that. I can live with the picking up the extra work. But now my frustration is the employees that are picking up the pieces, I still haven't had an answer on whether that employee's gonna get a raise or not. And we have 3 departments on hold.
For raises.
No, we have 3 departments on hold waiting because that employee can't make a decision until he knows if he's gonna get more money if he moves. So he's sitting in limbo. There's another employee interested in taking the other position, but he's sitting in limbo. The surveyor's office is sitting in limbo because they don't know who to train so that they can stop helping me with my recorder's work. We have 3 departments sitting in limbo, all wondering if this employee is gonna switch, but he's not going to switch if he doesn't get an increase. And whether he switches or not, he should get an increase because his workload has gone up tremendously. And his responsibilities are gonna go up tremendously. So I can understand taking a full FTE, but you need to take a little tiny chunk of that and put it on the people that have the extra shovel. I mean, that's only fair,
Mhm.
and we need an answer on it, and we need an answer soon, like very soon.
So once the
can I
budget's
just,
approved,
make
then
a
it's
comment? I was in the meeting, the three of us
Uh-huh.
here at the office. One of the things every day I come back, have we heard from the lawyers? Have we heard from the lawyers? We're waiting for lawyers to kind of tell us different things. When we have HR involved and we cannot talk to to the employees, and when we have lawyers that waiting to tell us what is the legal issue for us to proceed, it makes it hard, especially with the holidays and everything. It have been, and so when I left that meeting, I felt like we have figured out, we understood the situation, for people, and I left thinking, okay, we resolved. We felt like we had given, some of the desires you were asking, but we needed to. I mean, for my part, that's how I felt. We were waiting for lawyer, and every day I come back, have we heard from lawyer? No. So we have that too. It's not
Well,
something that we can decide
I
quick.
just want an awareness
Yeah.
that when a department head finds out that way that they've lost an entire FTE,
But
it's not polite.
yeah, but
It is not. It's not great. And I'm working through it. I'm gonna be okay. And hopefully we don't have a year like we did in 2023 when I had over $300,000 in revenue because of all of the documents that were coming in and just flooding our gates. If I have that happen again, then we're gonna have to have an increase in the budget. But then I will also have an increase in revenue. So I just wanted to say that in the future, just have a conversation. That's all I'm asking. And the situation that I'm in right now, I need an answer. I need to know where we're going. We have been in limbo for way too long. And like I said, 3 departments are on hold. And while we're talking about the budget, I don't know. I don't know if the budget includes an increase for that employee. I don't know if it doesn't because nobody's talked to me.
The budget includes no raises for anybody. Now, that's just the way that it's structured.
Okay.
If there's any decision made on that, or even if in the next year that there was a decision to be making on that, we could make an adjustment mid-year. But yeah, this budget has no increases for anybody at this point.
yeah, I don't want to cast argument, but my understanding was that the removal of one of the workers was to improve a situation.
Well, that's there. That's happened and that's good.
Yeah,
That
and
has
then
been good and helpful. But the problem, right, that we're sitting in right now is we don't even know what position to advertise for my third because everything's on hold
yeah,
because nobody has talked to the other employee. Nobody has let anybody know what's going on with him. So
And we-
he doesn't know if he's taking that position, so we don't know which position to advertise. Like I said, that's put 3 departments on
well,
hold.
and I totally understand. I lost lots of sleep worrying about that too. But my thing is, like I said, when I come back about the anyway, so I don't want to pass. I just go by what I remember from that meeting, and I was here for that meeting. The 3 of us, and I felt like we all understood. The only thing that's happening, and I don't know, I haven't asked back this morning if we could hear from the lawyers. We need to know how to proceed. We don't, and how to notify. We don't have an HR person right now that can kind of
Well, I just feel like
mediate
right
that
now
too,
we're
so.
talking about money, and I don't know if this is something that we could make happen today. Decision with the money. He says it doesn't include any increases. I have to have a increase to ask for that poor employee who has been shoveling crap all year.
Excuse me.
And he's gonna continue shoveling because we're down an entire FTE.
I also think we need to consider having more staff to make the money. I mean, the code enforcement pitch pays for itself and then some. And so it's a break even, if not throws a little bit back into the general fund. But unless we have somebody to administer that, we're maxed out. We don't have somebody to administer that. And so we're losing funds by not having staff available. I mean, it seems simple to me that it's a break-even job for somebody. It makes sense to have one more on our team.
Anyway, but I don't know how you heard from lawyers, Matt.
I know. Well, and so for the code enforcement, just to kind of, so we'll look at your budget item. If there's an increase on a shift like that, a shift of a person, then we can catch that adjustment in a mid-year adjustment. And so right now, and if you think of it, and you work budgets as well, so you understand this, is we can't make structural changes unless it's approved by the commission in a budget. And so every structural change was, hold on, let's get this 2025 budget approved with the adjustments and everything in there so that we're doing it right. We're just not making up decisions without the commission's approval and having it endorsed in a commission meeting.
I can understand
And so-
all that. I just need some communication.
Yeah,
I
and
just
so
need
that
to
was
know.
where my emails were like, hey, we're working on the budget, hold
I
on.
have an employee threatening to quit, and he's all I've got.
Absolutely, and there's
So
several
I am a
departments that
little
are
bit
just like,
stressed.
no, I totally understand. But yeah, so we'll work with you on looking at that budget to see, because there may be even wiggle room, because you lose an amount if it's a more tenured employee compared to a new employee, and so there's some wiggle room in budgets themselves, and so we'll take a look at that. But as far as your question, Kristen, about the enforcement, we do have a plan for code enforcement. In here, we have a county fire chief that is responsible for doing code inspections here in the county. In his budget, we've allocated additional funds for him to go to training and to become a certified fire inspector. I'm a certified fire inspector, and I can inspect everything that you're asking for. If we can get that for him, he can do our Airbnb inspections. He's supposed to do it on the fire side of it.
That
And-
doesn't work for our department, and we've had that conversation several times.
And I've had conversations with him, and he seems to be okay with that. He's fine with going to the training. It's just a matter of time for him. And so we will tackle the code enforcement side of it with the current employee, just by giving him additional duties in there, and he'll be responsible for that. He is already supposed to be responsible for it, and so it's just a matter of rising to that occasion.
I disagree with that strongly. That is not the hero we need.
So, any other questions or concerns? So, just going back to the budgets, just know on the departments, there were several departments that we looked at for cuts. We tried to go through and I asked the departments, through an email, I'm like, hey, is there any wiggle room in your budgets? Some come back and say, okay, here's where I can wiggle. I didn't hear from a majority of the departments on here, and so at that point in time, we kind of looked to see whether there's a want in there, and this is typical how we've done it before. If there's a want or a need, and try to determine, is it a want or a need from their requests. For example, there was a plotter request from the surveyor's office for the 2025 budget. Well, the recorder's office and the surveyor's office, they were able to pull that out of this year's 2024 budget, so we didn't need it in 2025. So we reduced that budget, just knowing that purchase has already been made. I think when you look at the department budgets, some of them have been significantly cut, especially if knowing that there are grant opportunities out there, and that they've taken care of some of those grant opportunities in the past to accomplish those goals and purchase those specific items. So if they ask for a snowmobile, and we've seen in the past where they've been able to get equipment off of a grant, then we've taken this snowmobile out, hoping that we can apply for a USDA grant to cover that, or through search and rescue means, or something like that. And so know that we have gone through. If you would like, I can go through department by department. It's kind of up to you, Commissioners.
Well, I've got a rundown here. If
go ahead, Peter.
yeah, I just wanted to. I mean, I'm just sort of looking at what I would call the material differences, just to kind of help us understand where we're at. In going back to, hold on, let me find my sheets here. So there was a bit of a difference in the attorney's office. I wanted to point out that what we did there was we reduced an FTE in that department, but shored it up with a contract and kind of a contract employee,
Which one are you on?
a county attorney. So go up just a titch. Just in case there was questions there. It's not a lot, but it saves us about $30,000.
Trying to get to it.
You have an FTE, you end up paying benefits versus a contract. And this contract person is our chief deputy attorney, if my understanding is correct. And so that's the difference there. If you move down the assessor's budget, there's a $100,000 uptick there. You know, we're all familiar with some of the issues related to the need to get some help contracting in the assessor's office for sort of closing the gap on assessing properties. That's where that comes into. I'm guessing that's part of what I've heard is the Gordon Low money, right? Maybe there's more to it than that.
There's two, yeah.
Yeah.
Anticipation of two.
Okay.
So I think Gordon Lowe is going to come in next month for the $65,000 contract to do assessing, and then I've reached out to a local appraiser that could come in and take up the remaining of the 100. We may need more than that 100,000. I've asked the state to look at Gordon Lowe's contract as well as what I would put in a scope of work for another appraiser service to come in. They haven't responded yet to me. Probably with the holidays, they're probably short-staffed as well. But for now, we anticipate around 100,000.
Okay. Yeah, and that's what we put in there. Moving down in the non-departmental, there. Keep going to the bottom there. There's a drop there. There were some purchases in 2024. There were one time that we're not going to have to roll over to the next year. Down in IT, we did budget for a position there. Kind of get us back to having somebody here, boots on the ground. This is probably one position that we felt like we've had to get back into the building because the IT demands of having somebody here to solve problems locally is pretty big. And on the flip side, though, the contract costs. So we're paying a lot of money for an IT contractor, and they're doing a lot of really big, large fixing projects in IT. Those will start to kind of wrap up. And so we're looking at going back to more of an earlier sort of arrangement where we have them doing high-level networking costs, but then having somebody here, boots on the ground, that can go around and fix, the small problems with people's computer issues, installing new programs, things like that. Next down the line, economic development, we see drops there. So scroll down to economic development, just on the basis of we had a lot of big grant projects and a lot of other sort of big projects that took place in 2024 that we, if we get more grants, that's great, but we're kind of going back to what I see as a typical year. And if we get more, that's great, but let's anticipate just what we've done in the past. And then if we can get some more funding, then we can spend more money there.
So what does the 625,000 come, they have multiple grants last
Yes, they did. Plus, we actually had a project out there,
RV.
the RV stalls that went way over budget.
Okay.
But again, some of our federal funding that we have can help kind of shore that up, and it's just a one-time cost,
Okay.
so we won't see that happen to repeat in future years.
I think we realized a grant in 2024 that was a 2023 grant as well, and so that why that bumped up so high. So there was about 400,000 from the state of Utah that was in that, included in there.
Yeah,
The state, and we really have to be careful and just keep in mind is some of our state contracts are split on their fiscal year, where we're an annual fiscal year budget. The state's fiscal year is a June to July. And so some of those are the differences that you'll see as a carryover. You see it more pronounced in TRT, in visitor services.
yeah. They write checks at the end of the year, and sometimes we've booked them in different years, which is complicating our ability to look at what the true costs are. But the state doesn't care because that's the middle of their fiscal year. So we're going to try to do better at making sure they're recorded in the right year, just to help with your understanding, so it doesn't look like we're too much out of whack. Visitor services, we're planning on some more grant funding there. That she's got a little bit. We don't like to plan for grants unless we've got sort of a good line on it. Like if we feel like we're going to get it, or if we've already started making the application, we'll go ahead and budget that. But if not, we're going to kind of go back to
Just like the traditional grants that
Yeah.
every year.
like if we do a 5-year rolling average of like $200,000 in state grants without all of the then we'll kind of just go back to that traditional sort of rolling average. So down to sheriff's office, we'll go down there. There's just a drop of 50,000 on their overall budget. Let's go down there to
Which one? Sorry.
sheriff's. Yeah, we're down to sheriff's now. There were some one-time equipment costs in this year that we're not going to pick up next year, as a way to sort of save some money there. Down to search and rescue.
So in 22 was, the budget was
1.9.
and on
2.6 is what we're
2023 was
adopting.
increased
Yeah.
by-
They came in with 2.9. Kind of as we met,
the
we
proposed
whittled that
budget.
down to 2.6.
So do you only, so from 2022 to the proposed budget for 25, it's
Yeah.
$1 million difference?
So kind of what I do is when I look at the department's request. So, for example, they requested sheriff employee education $15,000. They've really only spent around, if you were to average this out, around 4.5. So I left that at 5. I didn't give them the 15 because average wise they've never spent 15, and so that's kind of how, when I look at where to take at, this last year in special department supplies they were at 9.1, so 9,140. Previous to that they were at 10,000. Previous to that they were at 2,000 in special department supplies.
Yeah.
So I kept them at 10. Didn't give them the full 20 on there, and so that's kind of behind how I do things in my mind. Is like, and that's a want compared to a need. For me, it's like, well, if you need to go travel and you need an employee education, yes, that definitely is that. But 15 to go from only this year anticipating spending 3,400, and all of a sudden you want 15,000. That's a pretty drastic jump, and so that's where I placed it at 5 instead of that. There is it'll be interesting to see on the reporting of revenue as well, because now that that commissary count is there,
Yeah, we'll see that down in the jail.
there's some additional revenue that can come
Yeah.
that should be in their revenue to help offset some of this in the future.
That one point. So again, we looked at this pretty intensely just to try to get it a little more, I think, just to kind of help make sense just a little bit more. We were able to pull that down from 2.9. But if you look at the differential between 2022 and 2025, more than half of that's in your employee costs, if you can see up there at the top. And then so another big piece of that is we committed some funds this year that are undergirded by LACL or either ARPA or LACTF. I don't know which one we used, but to purchase a bunch of vehicles leases at the sheriff's office. That carries over for 5 years, but that's another, $150,000 that kind of adds to that. And we have to have that in there for at least the next, 2 or 3 years before those leases expire. But it's going to be an ongoing cost that we committed to that I believe we can sort of earmark those LACTF funds to sort of cover in the future because of one-time cost. And but that's really sort of, as you can see, that's really the big jump. Really relates to those two big pieces.
On this one, we moved from up above to down below, so it was kind of an offset within the budget. We'll have to look at this a little bit further, and there's pluses or minuses on the vehicle leases. If all of a sudden we went and purchased all the leases, the leased vehicles for the sheriff's office, it's more than 155. This is just covering the actual annual lease payments themselves, and so it doesn't include a balloon or
right.
a final payment. And so that was one of the things Peter and I had discussed is, okay, what's the strategy that we need to have for LATCF funds as they go through, and instead of just depleting the savings just to shore up, it's trying to get a strategy of being a little bit more offensive in our budget to where we can play that offense and actually make some good purchases, good changes in here that'll free up our general fund here in the future. And this is one of them that we've got to look at to see if it's really cost prohibitive. If you took the sheriff requested two additional vehicles this year. Well, that's if you were to take off of just the market, you're looking around $90,000 to $100,000 a new vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
And if they've got
Per vehicle?
Per vehicle, yes. Yep. And so that's part of the difficulty is I can't just buy a stock vehicle. I have to do the stock vehicle plus all of the stuff in it. So the cage, the radio, the stickers, the sirens, the lights, all of that kind of has to change. So their vehicles are a little bit more expensive than.
Do they have other counties? They're smaller counties. Probably the vehicles doesn't pay you so much where you can go
On surplus?
In a surplus.
You can. It's pretty difficult on a public safety vehicle to take a used vehicle.
Okay.
Similar with your ambulances. You typically want those as top notch instead of a hand-me-down. But sometimes you can find those surplus vehicles. We've just never been in the business of looking at those surplus. Some of the trade-in vehicles that maybe Ken Garf gets, we can look at those that still cover a warranty for a couple of years. But you're absolutely that right frame of mind is we've got to start thinking a little bit more
become creative,
offensive like that.
Because the thing is, when we are short of money, it's stressful. You can see the stress here. The stress. Worried about how can we keep what we have, the needs when we don't have the income.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't, I mean, I'm optimist. I think San Juan County has wonderful opportunities, but in the meantime, what do we do so that because everybody has needs. Everybody needs more help. Everybody, there's people that are doing double what they should be doing probably in a normal job, but at some point, how do we keep the balance and not lose workers and keep the balance and not go in the hole when we don't have the money to buy? And I don't know how can we share that with so everybody can understand where we are. I mean, all I hear, we're a taxpayer, we're paying taxes, things should happen. Well, do we understand where the taxes get spent, where the taxes go? I don't know. I feel bad when I wish workers can come with a little jump and feeling good. Wow, it's gonna be a wonderful day. Instead of thinking another day are stressing, being stressed out, and I know it passes down to to everybody. So we just need to figure out creative ways or ways that we can figure out how can we, and I don't have an answer for it. I keep thinking different things, but
Yeah. Part of that in an email to you, I had mentioned, the possibility of forming a budget committee where we get several departments in with you to help kind of review and understand the budget.
Well,
That's where I learned.
and I think it
from other
helps
counties.
because they can pass the information instead of having 2 or 3 people they know it and we know it and we cannot answer questions because some of those things are behind closed doors.
Yeah.
And so I think we somehow need a better way to understand that this is not forever. Maybe things will improve by the middle of the year, we can adjust, but
And I think it's a way to get more employees involved, if they understand kind of behind the scenes or just being able to look at it through a holistic eyes instead of just department by department eyes. Sometimes it's easy to get fixated on your department but not understand as a whole. I mean, in all of this, we're still living beyond our means. And so, departments want excess and they want to be able to do extra, which is a good thing. They want to serve the public, but yet we don't have infinite dollars. We're at a finite budget restriction, and now we really got to get into the mindset of where can we start to save, where can we start to cut back and cut costs, because unless you're willing to do a tax increase, and even a tax increase isn't going to make up for $1 million deficit.
well, and it's the same people that we go over and over for more increase in taxes. And there are people that are being affected, people that bought their home a long time ago, they paid for it, the taxes are higher now because the neighbor building a $400,000 home next door. And so I don't know, I think it's probably time for us to put everything in the board and show people. I remember, what's his name, the one that created the big tractor museum. He used to be our boss on the school district. We all wanted money, and he sat down and showed us what the money was, and then we could quit asking because we knew we didn't have it. So I don't know, but it's just something that it would lower people's blood pressure a little bit.
Sorry, Peter.
Sorry.
No problem.
Derailing you.
Sorry, I just,
You gave me an opportunity to take a break there.
I'm sorry, I just,
So moving on down to so search and rescue, you'll see quite a bit of a dip. That's because we bought a UTV this year that we're not going to have to, pay for next year. So that's why that drop is there. Next down is the wildland fire budget. $120,000 state contract charges went up. Is this where I'm not sure if this is where you're talking about them doing inspections and stuff, and that's why it's gone up. But this is just an assessment from the state
The
for.
state does an allocation. So every fire that we have, there's costs from that fire, and whatever those costs are, the state kind of averages those costs. They drop
Thank
off
you, thank
the highest costing fire and the lowest costing fire out of that matrix, and all of the other fire costs average out, and that's what the county gets to pay. Now the county can either pay that in kind of volunteer fire mitigation, and Dave does a really good job with fire mitigation, and we've got part-timers that we will hire in, and they will come in and they'll mitigate, a high fire area, especially if it's around homes. But part of this was also a bigger discussion with the state. We had that fire this year out towards Devil's Canyon, and that fire had just started as a small fire, and then the Forest Service comes in, takes over that fire, but then they let it burn for multiple days. So that way they're able to clear vegetation through those fires and kind of steer the fire towards a specific direction. But those costs still come back to the county on there. And so I've talked to the state. I'm like, if it's the Forest Service choice to continue to let a fire burn on their own, the county shouldn't have to pick up the tab when it hits the private properties. And so they're looking a little bit further into that, but most of this, for the most part, we're able to mitigate. We do have to put it in our budget if it can't, but every year this will ebb and flow. 2 years ago, we had that fire here that was a pretty expensive fire that came on the books. Pack Creek Fire was our highest costing fire, so that comes off of the top, and we don't have to pay for as much of that anymore, and it reduces that, but yet you're still seeing that $224,000 cost in average. And so we're hoping we can get that down through that mitigation process.
All right, down to the jail. Now this one
Sorry, Peter. Fire
Oh, did you
rescue
want
is
to?
the one
Oh,
that-
okay.
So this is Dave's budget where I put in that employee
Okay.
education of $2,000.
Gotcha. Okay.
Bump that up, and I think I understand Kristen's disagreement with it, but he's our fire chief, fire warden, does a good job. He should be doing the inspections, and so it's getting him the proper tools so that he can do it. It won't cost the county anything extra. We'll probably have to bump his pay a little because now he'll also be doing residential inspections as well, but it makes sense where we don't have to get another vehicle. He's there. He should be doing fire inspections on these overnight rentals anyway. So it's just kind of helping him have the right tools to actually do what he's supposed to be doing anyway.
Okay, moving down to the jail. One of the things that they're down about $150,000 on the budget requests, but I'm a little bit nervous. I'm going to ask if we can put the 120 back in on the inmate expenses. That is a revenue-based expenditure, and I don't know if 62,000 is a rational or reasonable expectation for those. And since that's essentially an in and out from the state, I think that would be better off if we put that back in there. We could just do it in an amendment, during a mid-year, but I think 120K versus 62 is a better, 120 on top of the
like 190.
No, I'm sorry. 150K. That's the one I want in that line, just to sort of shore that up, so that's a more reasonable sort of expectation. Again, we can kind of just see how the year goes, and we can make an adjustment there as well too. But I just think it's a little bit low.
The state does a good job on reimbursing us these costs as well, as long as it's
Yeah.
a state inmate. If it is a county inmate that's under our care and they do have medical expenses, then we do have to pay for those. But for the most part, I think last year we had a medical claim from a state inmate at about $80,000 for an eye, where we had to fly him out. Had no choice but to.
Yeah. That's that 238, right? That's where that came up. But I'm just thinking, since we are showing an increase in the revenue side of this, we probably ought to commensurate it with the expenditure side, since it is sort of a contract cost. So just, weigh on that as we go down the list here. That's going to pop us up a bit more if we make that adjustment. Going to emergency services. And again, just kind of skipping over the ones that aren't. If you notice there, the building inspection there, that got rolled up into planning and zoning, so you won't see that one anymore. As far as its own individual bucket, emergency services is up. We're anticipating a new project that's going to be. These things are typically grant funded, and so you're seeing that up in the equipment purchases there. That's popped that up about $110,000. The next sort of big sort of change, go down to San Juan County homeless.
Where are you at? Children's Justice.
Yeah, that keep going down. As far as big bumps, big changes. Go to the homeless there. And I'm not sure what that is, Mac. Maybe you can explain. Just this grant for
100% grant.
Okay. That's kind of what I thought.
This will be where we will pull. So we'll be hiring a part-time individual to promote our homeless services that we have here in the county. And this is all 100% grant covered.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for explaining that, because I thought you'd knew. And then the only other sort of big sort of changes you'll see is in special projects. I do think that, so if you go all the way to the bottom here of our, past the Cal Black into special projects, we do see quite a bit of a sizable jump there. There's a $50,000 or $40,000 up tick. That's a NACO. Is that a Econ Mobility? That's grant cost or grant as well? Yep. The only other question I have is in the project debt principal payment. I think we're capturing that in the MBA fund, but I'm not exactly sure.
We'll have to look for that. I have that question in.
Yeah.
I just left it there in case we didn't. This is the payment for hideout.
So we could just leave that in there. If we find that later on, we can make that adjustment during mid-year. So that's really the only difference there. And as you can see, we talked a little bit about health insurance. We do anticipate it coming down quite a bit more towards what you're, at least this is split out a little bit more. You could see it before that. You just saw the total undistributed employee benefit line. This breaks it out just a little bit. You can see that even though the undistributed health insurance, that's our PEHP. And we do think that next year is going to be our sort of clean year without any sort of any Regents, Blue Cross Blue Shield charges coming into play. But our workman's compensation, that's going to go up. We've had an audit. We've gone through and kind of retooled some things. It has not been in our favor, but so we kind of have to capture that, make sure that we cover that in case we get those billings for workman's compensation. And then and the other kind of big piece to look at here, I like to sort of point out, that kind of gives us a visual representation of our operating budget, is the final piece of this is our transfers. As you can see, a lot of what we got to pay for relates to things that we have to subsidize our other funds. and and what we have to come up with in order to keep them whole. And it's a really good sort of thing to look at every year to see how much it is that we have to cover to keep them afloat versus what they can do on their own. The 163 is statutorily required. That is our match for the health fund. But all of the others are just really, at the end of the day, they relate to what we've got to cover in order to keep them afloat. So that's sort of what we look at seeing for 2025 and in the operating fund. Any other questions
The
or?
other one is there is kind of this anticipated as the planning and zoning finalizes that ordinance. We do have, if we are able to get that approved and passed with the new overnight rental permit system, we will have to have somebody within our organization oversee those. It makes sense, so we already have an employee doing the business license portion, also do the overnight rental portion. If you have an overnight rental, you have to have a business license. So those go
Would
hand
that
in
be
hand.
somebody in Kristen's office?
No, this will be, so in the business license, that's handled under economic development. And so there would be a small increase for that additional duties to oversee the overnight
Maybe
rental
Nate.
side of it. And then you'll have Dave out there doing the inspections on the fire with our code enforcement. So I know it may not be favorable, but for us, structurally, it makes sense for those
And it
changes
keeps-
there. But
It gives Nate an opportunity to go and see, try what he think he can do, and then if he generates enough funds, maybe
and then there's a
Can be
different
up-
discussion. Yeah,
it can be a discussion for
Yep.
a better position
yeah.
or
Other than that, I can't really think of anything else that we're missing to let you know.
well, what else can we talk so we can keep Commissioner
And
Adams?
this is just the general fund piece, but
There is one more thing that looks kind of odd to me, and that is, and for some reason this schedule's not picking it up. I've been working with the auditors to sort of portray our fund balances a little bit clearer to the public. They're having me put it as an offset in expenditure, so that's where you're seeing that transfer from 2022 to 23 of 1.2 million, and that sort of put us in that gave us a bit of an increase in 2023. In this budget, we are anticipating rolling that over. It's not set up in that line, so let's also add that to our. I don't know why it's not. It's
it'd be up at the top.
yeah, maybe
You
that's
just
why.
Switch the up at the top to a different budget. Yeah. Did you want to go also with that?
Do I have like a
Shifted?
do I have like a schedule
Do you have a
that's
question?
more of a summary?
I'm sorry.
The HR budget?
The HR budget?
Being a personnel. Mhm.
Yeah.
And we didn't really go over it because there wasn't a lot of shifting going
There was
on there,
only-
but
there was the software change that when we were looking at Polaris, and this kind of goes back to your thoughts, Lori, that you had. It's like we had taken that software package out, try to figure out Polaris can do some of what we're asking for, but really it's Timekeeper that we've got to figure out. I've got to have a discussion with Crystal just to see where she's at. And so if things were iffy like that on software requests is like, well, maybe I want this instead of this piece, but let me look at this one. Then we held off on those purchases for right now in their budgets until we can actually finalize and get closer to what a true cost or a true request would be.
So I thought when she came, she had that presented.
She had the one that she had looked at, but then there
I thought
was
that encompassed everything that she was asking for when they all
correct. It did, but then when we were looking at Polaris itself, Polaris can do some of like performance plans, things like that. Polaris can already do it. It's a program that we already pay for. And so why would we buy another software that includes it when we can already include it over here with something that we already have? And so it was really just taking a look at how can we avoid going severe costs on that, where we can probably piecemeal the piece, especially when if we look at like onboarding's and another one that we've got to look at is the piece that's done by GBS, which is our insurance provider. They've got some onboarding there, and so it's looking at all the pieces that we already have to pay for. And then maybe in the end of the day, it's just the timekeeper piece that we've got to work with. Well, can Polaris help us with that? And so it's just more exploration that needed to be done.
So that could still be a conversation.
Absolutely.
I'm thinking if you're piecing three together, but then you do the man hours on, would it be better to, I mean, that needs to be looked at, to scrap the whole thing and then have one piece that does everything.
Mm-hmm. And then we would, but if that's the problem, if we're already paying for these other software pieces that have it, then can we reduce it down to the one?
Contracts, or will they expire year to year?
I'm sorry?
Are those contracts year to year?
Typically, yes. So like
She would
Polaris.
So she would need to come forward with when those contracts expire and have that conversation.
And then we would holistically take a look at it, because Peter and I have talked about Polaris. It's like, well, if we're not using all of the pieces of Polaris, how can we use it? Polaris, I think, costs us $7,000 a year. And so,
It's more than that, but trying to think, it's like 2,000 something a month. But it is an encompassing program that takes in all of our GL, all of our accounting. What HR came in to look at, sort of just the HR piece of it, which, you know, if we do that, there may be some opportunity for some savings. Maybe we carve off. There's essentially two programs that operate with the Polaris contract. One is the actual Polaris itself, and one's called Timekeeper. And if we could find a substitution for the Timekeeper program, to me, that is the number one question to solve. Polaris may have an option to solve some of the other pieces that we're not doing currently, such as performance reviews. And then there's some other onboarding tools that they may or may not have. But there's also other programs out there that do onboarding. Think of it this way. Right now, if you come and apply at the county, you have to print out. I say this all the time. This was my experience. I printed out. I went to apply for the job, and it just pulls up a PDF that I had to print out and fill out with pen and scan back in to send back to the county. It sat on my desk for like a month because I was like, what a pain, right? So being able to like substitute that with like an online form that I can just fill out that gets sent to HR, that will help. And so I think that's sort of some of the tools that she's looking at trying to include. I know because I'm part of what I do is HR, so I know some of what the concerns is that we got to solve. But some of that we can just do, for example, with creating fillable PDFs. That would solve that problem. Just make our PDFs fillable, but then being able to capture that data. Are there programs out there that allow us to do that? And so that's a piece of it. That's definitely a piece of it. But the number one piece that really needs to be solved is the ability for employees to book their time when they're not at the office. If you're a roads employee or a sheriff's department, you don't always come into the office to clock your time. You're out in the field. And right now our program does not allow for that. And so the only way you can do it in those departments at this point in time is through just an audit trail. So in other words, the employees will just report their hours to their supervisors, and we'll just enter that in manually. And, you know, there's pros and cons to that, but if we have that capability of capturing an app where someone clocks their time and when they start their job, when when they're working on a road project down in Bluff, that tends to be a little more accurate than just having them fill out their timesheet 2 weeks worth of time, after the fact. That tends to be a little less accurate. I think that's really sort of what's kind of undergirding this issue.
And Polaris had mentioned that they were working on an app, a mobile app for their timekeeper, but that was a year ago that we had heard that from them. And so a lot of it was just following up with these missing pieces. And instead of putting it into our budget as an increase, just at X amount of dollars, it's easier. Okay, let's take it out. Let's study it further until we actually know what it is we want. Planning is a similar situation where she had also asked for an additional program, that OS government, which would help her on the permit side of it. We currently have a permit system that the cities use, and the cities had mentioned, East Monticello had mentioned, well, we're not going to migrate from this program that we have. The current iWorks program does have the modules that we can add on to it, and so instead of going this other route and getting the second or third type of a program, let's work on the software that we have. If they can add the different modules on it, then let's use that, because that's what we're already used to. That's what all of our data is already into that system, so it makes it easier and cheaper to add the modules rather than let's just find another program to solve this problem. Last I spoke with planning is they were also, instead of the government or the OS government program, it was like, well, maybe let's use this KISS Flow program. That's about $4,000. So that tells me they're still exploring. They're still trying to figure out, okay, what is it? In the meantime, we still have this existing program that's working. We just need to add other modules to it. And so it's like, well, maybe we just put pause on the software side of it and really further explore what we want to do with the software side of it.
So she just needs to have that conversation.
I'm sorry?
So that's a conversation that just needs to be.
Yes. Yep. We just got to have those conversations.
What page is that on, Peter?
I don't have the number for it, but it is under personnel.
Is that the HR budget you're asking about, Lori? It's on page 1, and it's under.
We can pull that up.
General
I'm
government.
looking at it right here.
There it is.
Underneath
Yeah.
Public defender, I think.
So right here. Let me,
Is there a page number right there on the bottom of it?
how's that?
Yeah, that works.
So 35,000.
150, page 150.
Okay, thank you.
Just for the record, any other public comments before? Any questions? Do we have anyone on the
No,
link?
it's just us.
Okay.
So
Alright,
we've gotten through the general fund.
Did we have any recommendations for changes? I forgot.
I recommended that we put essentially
Just the
150 back in that medical expense line.
For the jail?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's probably something.
Lori,
to
would
note
you
for
like us to
commissioners.
put that back in to the budget on the software?
No, I just hate to close the door completely without it.
It won't be. We're never closed door. So-
Right, just the fact that, I mean, sometimes maybe we don't know exactly what you want, but at the same time, if we're branching out, how much are we really spending branching out plus time versus consolidate? I mean, I see both sides of the argument. It
yeah.
just needs to be a conversation that needs to really be looked into.
Yes, and so it's like it's just further, and then if there's changes like that we actually want, you use the commission want, then we can catch them in mid-year, or we can even come in pre-mid-year to make the adjustments if we have to.
Thank you.
So it's that $35,000 that was removed that we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Just that jail increase. That was it. We'll probably have to take another $150K out of LACTF though to make us whole. So that's really just the only thing I saw that we needed to add back in. I just think it's just way too much of a shock to expect that we're not going to have those kinds of expenses there in the jail. Plus, it's also a revenue-based expense. we got to make sure that our revenues balance with our expenditures on those certain types of contracts. It's not a grant per se, but it's a. And I apologize. I just barely learned about how all this worked just like today. It's been one of the kind of big ideas in my mind as to how all of the jail state expenses and reimbursements work. I got a better sense of it now. And so I think that's just a prudent thing to do.
Okay.
So just kind of keep that in mind. Let's go through the rest of the budgets. Let's go through the rest of the funds here real quick. Won't take as much time. There's not as much to talk about, but we do need to go through those so that you're aware of what we're looking at doing. So if you go into the roads here, the big thing to look at here is they are anticipating $350,000 of transportation district revenue. We've had that in the past. We haven't captured any last year. I don't know what we're going to get this year, but they are hoping to capture some. I'm trying to remember TJ's explanation on that, but I think that just has to do with these are things that they really like to keep in the budget and make sure that we're kind of watching that. We've had some revenues that haven't materialized, that they're paid for services, and we got to keep it there so we can kind of hold people's feet to the fire on charges and stuff.
If we can get those payments to come to fruition, he's anticipating that they're coming. You don't see anything from the Navajo Nation or last year's BIA, and so he's kind of anticipated that they come here in 2024, or 2025. So we can get back to work on those.
What page is that? Is that
Page 166.
21 in your packet, I think.
Okay.
We are down on our sale of fixed asset revenue just because we're not anticipating having a fixed sale or a surplus sale in 25. We had a real big one in just this year. We only do them every so few years, and so that's going to show a dip there.
Commissioner Harvey, were you able to find it? Sorry, it's one.
No, it's
if you
okay.
look at 166,
Okay. I think so.
there's like a black
In the page packet, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
so
Gotcha.
166
Got it.
is the road department.
Okay. Cool.
So those where you're seeing the BIA and the Navajo Nation, where we didn't get any revenue last year from them.
Right.
The transportation district is a grant that we request from the transportation district is itself, and so
Okay. Got it.
The contribution from other units there, that's just that will be payments from their PTIF fund, which cover it kind of gets commingled with the B Road money from the state.
covers all of the next year's road projects that they have scheduled.
The other thing to note is that because we are changing how we're charging the funds, you're going to see a new line for intergovernmental work on here. Before, we used to have it as a transfer. So the transfer goes away, but you'll see it in intergovernmental charges. Those are the charges that the general fund is going to essentially invoice the roads department for. Let's see, what line is it? It's not revenue, it's expenses. So go down to, there you go. Intergovernmental charges, 101,580. So you'll see that there, but you won't see it as in the transfer line below. So those are really the biggest changes to the roads. They're obviously going to spend more money because they're anticipating more, but
Yeah, they got about 600,000 in B road funds over 400 and something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, they've increased their overall revenue from what we get from the state.
So the B road funds, they just stay in their account, doesn't roll over to the general fund.
In that transfer,
I mean, the B roads, the department, they have the money they get from the
Yes.
roads. That's just in their account, it keeps rolling
Correct.
over, or does it go to the general fund where they don't
No.
use?
No, it's
Other than that charge for general fund services, that everything else has to stay within that Fund 21.
Okay.
but the fact that the general fund does work for on behalf of the B roads, and that's sort of what we're trying to capture. And we've did that a little bit in the past. They did pay for some administrative services. We're just trying to make that a little more comprehensive going forward. So yeah, that's pretty much it on the B roads. And just again reminding that we are splitting out that revenue source so it's a little more transparent. All right, so down to
MBA is pretty straightforward.
I don't have any real notes on MBA other than this is where we're
Gotta make our
gonna
loans and our bond payments.
yeah we're gonna get that 26 million that we said we wanted to pull out of 24. We have it here in 25. This is kind of where the money first comes into the county. It comes in through this particular fund so we can capture the costs of
So that's for the hospital.
the debt and debt principal, and then we'll move the proceeds over into the capital fund for expenditure. So that's how you'll see that's kind of how it will work there. The help fund, they put in and they kind of moved their contract payments up about $500,000. I think that's a little ambitious, but again, it's kind of an in and out. If they don't actually fulfill the contract, they're not going to get the revenue, nor will they get the contract expenditure. But I just kept it in there at this point, just in case
So
that.
where's the early childhood grant there? Can we see it to see how much they spend already? Or
Honestly, don't even know how that translates. One of the problems with some of our grants is that there's the colloquial term for it versus what's in the budget versus what the state calls it. I'm actually working on a project right now where I'm trying to sort of get the nomenclature a little more transparent so you can see what it actually is. But
It was a PBG, but it was a B5. I don't know the
so they had not spent their money. Is that what we were saying earlier? They had not done.
Well, if you look at their budget, one of the things you got to point out, with their budget is they don't budget by contract; they budget overall, and so you have to go all the way up to the initial sort of start of their expenditures. They kind of lump it all together.
I'll show you what he's talking about. So you see in 2025 proposed and adopted, you don't see any numbers in there, but then you get back to the beginning, and that's where you start to see the
was no salary
department
paid.
budgets.
Yeah, right. Just this one page right here is really their budget for expenditures because they have it all aggregated.
The independent auditor, they mentioned that we've got to really jump in and fix this budget so that's a little bit more transparent. It's pretty hidden because they're cost code accounting. We just got to try to get it in Polaris to where we can code it. They can code it to the contract because that's kind of as employees go out and they use timekeeper. It's coded specific to contracts, but then it should roll up into these object codes, and that's where we get lost. Is it's not.
So they have $167,000 on training, professional and technical training. With previous years, they got zero.
No, it gets broken out. This is what he's talking about. Transparency wise, it can be kind of rough to read because we budget on the aggregate, but then what happens is during the year, they move all the costs out of that general line. In fact, if you notice, there's lots of zeros there.
Yeah.
If there aren't zeros, that's actually kind of a problem. That needs to be moved. Those are things that have to be cleaned up, but it gets moved down to the contract lines. And same with all these indirect costs. When you see those negative numbers like that, those are offsets. So we pay a certain amount of money to general just into the wage bucket, but then we got to pull it out and we have to split it out to all the contracts. It works. We had a conversation with the auditors about that. They have no problem with the way this is structured, other than it's just not very transparent or visible to the public. And so we'd like to work on getting it so that there's so that they can look at their contracts and go, hey, we anticipate spending this much on each one of these contracts.
And even for us trying to find out where the money's going,
You
it can
can't.
help us.
Yeah, it's very, very
You
difficult
can't see it.
to see. And so it's a project we're going to have to work on with them as they kind of got reorganized a little bit. We'd like to, I also have a different schedule that I'm working on with public health that we can then use in the future. I call it a contract schedule, so you can see it sort of kind of has an in and out. And it just looks a little more, it's just a little more easier to read. And maybe between those two things, we can get something that's going to be a little easier to understand.
Yeah, I can't find that contract.
Yeah. I mean, if they haven't spent any money on it, there'd be zeros anyway. And that would be,
Well, I think the
sort of
first
the
year
issue.
they spent 9,000 of the one contract, and then, but where that first year they
Is
only
that the,
spent
where the
$9,000.
$11,000 comes from that grant?
It
Or
was
another?
9,000 first year, 11,000 the next, but then they had to make this huge Herculean leap in the last year to.
Yeah. So all these lines that you see, they'll submit this to the state, and then the state will reimburse us essentially. That's why there's so many lines split out, because it's kind of the way the state wants us to organize it, so they can look at it and make a decision about reimbursement. But it's a lot of lines, and some of those lines have very few dollars going in and out of them. So it can be it's kind of frustrating for me as an accountant, because you spend a lot of time to put $4 into a line. It's not a good return on your investment. So that's all I have on public health.
Let me get down. Here's EMS. What's your next one?
EMS. What do I have on them? So we're looking at some. Again, their big thing here is that we're charging them as a fund for services, and then we're going to take it out as a transfer. So you'll see that more down on the expenditure side of things. We're going to give them more money. We're anticipating to subsidize them more than what was requested, because we're going to be taking it out as a governmental or an intergovernmental charge. Right there, $36,000. So that's really that shows you kind of somewhat of the difference. We are hoping that with the update and how things are operating there, that we'll start to see some more revenue come through transports and things like that. But we're not going to budget for that yet. We'll wait and see how that kind of rolls in.
We are anticipating applying to the CDBG grant this year for a transport vehicle. So instead of transporting using our ambulances, use more of those little box trucks for a transport, a little bit more.
We'll save
Easier
lots of
on our
mileage
system.
on those ambulance, to have a cheaper vehicle to the
Yeah.
transport.
That's what we're hoping.
Any questions on this, on the EMS budget?
Okay, I just looking over here, total.
Let's see the next one.
Next one,
This commissary.
that should be just an in and out. We are anticipating more this year, just to capture some more of those charges. I think we're going to get.
Now we did remove this cattle drive revenue and put that in our general fund instead of commissary. It has nothing to do with commissaries, so this will just be strictly commissary. inmate bay.
Yeah, when we clean up 24, we'll pull all that out. All you'll see is one line in and one line out, and that's all you'll see. We initially had set it up with some other charges going in and out, but we decided we needed to have that pretty isolated. Next one, again, this is just
CRA, this is our tax increment. The state pretty much tells us this, and we've got it projected out on a 25-year CRA. This is our only project area. There is discussions about a new project area coming in, or multiple coming in, whether it's inland port or a county CRA here within this next year, possibly 2 years.
capital projects. You'll see that 26 million in there to start working on the jail. And, you know, we're kind of looking at starting to spend some of our capital project monies. This is what we predict we're going to be doing in 25.
We did have the airplane funds that were still in there that we had originally targeted for Spanish Valley, putting a center there, a fire station, and kind of that building. We really won't get to that. We're hoping, and we haven't been able to get the notices out to do the annexation plan for the northern portion of the county on the fire. That'll come here this next year. But I place this in there, the 245, just in case. We will have to match, not necessarily match one for one, but we will have to provide county funds for the CJC remodel. And the CJC is willing to pay for the remodel, but they're not willing to pay for the remodel where it comes into the sheriff's space. Mm-hmm. And so the county would have to pay for that piece of it. And so that 245 would be used for that CJC
so
building.
we're still going to keep the sheriff
in that building. Yeah, that's an essential function, I think, right there. With the task
do we
force
have
in that building.
Arrangement for their parking, not parking in front of the building?
There's parking out front, and there's parking towards the side. There's also parking in the back.
Because I passed one night, and there was 3 or 4, probably I'll say 3 police cars parked in front of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so
it kind of ebbs and flows there. There's not a lot of space on the property to park at all.
Yeah, I
inside.
Just the nature of the building.
It is. Yep.
Kind of
yeah. But I did bring those funds over in anticipation that we may have to use a portion of those for that remodel. And so hopefully that makes sense as far as project wise. Other than that, you'll see some of Sam's projects that we've committed ARPA funds to that will come out of this as well. For the remaining bid spend, as long as we had it committed in a contract, then we can still spend those funds here. Moving forward, that might be it.
Landfill. So with the landfill, you know, we like to estimate again. He likes to estimate just a little bit conservatively on his revenue. We think we're going to get more than that, but we're going to keep it what we proposed. The one thing that we kind of changed a little bit is we took the increases from the surpluses, and we're kind of popping that into 25's budget so that we can pay for a loader that he's looking to buy. So you'll see this negative 219 at the top. That's actually that's a change in positive to our net position. That helps us to kind of pay for that. And so that's sort of the thing you'll see that's big there that changed from the earlier requests.
During his budget hearing, he talked about the possibility of, and it was on previous year's budgets, is the need to purchase a new semi for for the bins that he picks up. And so this year we had explored the possibility of leasing a new truck or purchase. He has decided the best route for him to go would be to purchase that. And so he's added that, or asked to add that $150,000 there for that semi truck purchase. And then we would take the winch system and everything off the existing truck and then place on the new truck so that the costs aren't super high. It's not 100% brand new, but at least the truck that they're using right now really shouldn't. Even when I talk to the road department, the mechanics there is like, we really need to take that truck off the road and not have it running back and forth. So that's the only other real change.
Yeah, that's the big difference.
And,
It looks like it's a negative, but when you add that fund balance change up at the top, it wipes that out. All right. Tort liability. We're just anticipating this to keep going up. So we've sort of populated that likewise.
got that deficit decrease to the deficit in here.
Yep.
And then
We do have a deficit in this fund, so we're trying to pay it back. Tax stability, we're just, we don't know what we're going to get. I still think that's an incorrect amount, 822. I need to go talk with her on that, on the interest earnings. But we'll go see where that's at. I'm just going to keep it at 300 for now. If we have more, that would be great, but let's just keep it where it's at. And then finally, the library. Kind of like with EMS, you'll see that they're going to see more in transfers than anticipated, but that's going to also be offset by additional charges, so we can show that sort of transparent cost to the general fund for services to the library fund. And that's really the big difference you're going to see here for 25. And that is really it for the funds. Are there any other pressing or large concerns or issues or discussions or things that you would need
changes you want us to make?
Changes. This is the time to do it. Although, like what Max said, if we don't know for sure and then we find out in 3 or 4 weeks that we have to make a change in January, we can make the change with anticipation of a mid-year adjustment.
I make a motion that we close our public hearing on our 2025 general fund and related budgets.
Motion by
Motion.
Commissioner Adams to exit public hearing, seconded by Commissioner Stubbs. Okay.
Make a motion, we adopt our 2025 proposed budget for general fund and related budgets with what changes, Peter?
We're going to put $150,000 back in that jail expenditure.
Yep.
And then we'll pay for it with additional LACTF funding.
Okay, that's with those changes as described.
Okay. Motion to adopt with changes by Commissioner Adams,
Second the motion.
seconded by Commissioner Stubbs. Any other comments or questions? Hearing none, let's take a vote. All those in favor to adopt with recommended changes, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. It's 3 in favor. Unanimous approval on the adoption of the resolution with changes.
I'm going to make a motion, we go into public hearing to consider an adoption of a resolution of the governing body of San Juan County authorizing the executive to exchange county property with and to the San Juan County Community Fund for property located adjacent to the Public Safety Building for a new court and Public Safety Administration building.
Motion by Commissioner Adams to enter into public hearing.
I'll second it.
Seconded by Commissioner Stubbs. Okay, we are now in public hearing mode.
We need to take a vote.
Okay. Well, I
Oh,
can.
Let's take a vote real quick on
Oh,
public
for the
hearing.
public hearing, yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 3 in favor. All right. Sorry, Matt. Go ahead.
Nope, you're totally fine. So down at the fairground, we have adjacent to a residence, there's anticipation. We talked about this a while ago about the possibility of using some of the property down there for affordable housing, and then hearing from the foundation itself and knowing where we're trying to expand the property here adjacent to our public safety building. Let me zoom out on this picture. There is this, so this foundation owns this parcel here
The old
next
Young Theater.
to public. It is the
Just
old
next to the
Young
jail.
Theater.
Just-
And so, minus the lines, it's kind of shifted a little bit. There's this property here that the foundation owns that they had came in and asked the county. They knew that we were looking to expand and remodel the jail. They had offered this up and said, "Hey, if you have property that you can trade us, we'd be willing and interested in further discussing that and possibly doing that trade." There is anticipation from our designers as we looked at how do we fit everything in this building, and to keep our costs low during the remodel. The less we perforate the walls, the better it is. If we reach a certain point where we've taken out so many exterior walls, they would require a seismic upgrade, which means we don't have enough funds to actually remodel the jail. So to try to avoid that, the builder and the designer have mentioned, well, if you build this new building off to the side of it and you only perforate it once and use the existing doors on there, then we can save you costs by doing so. So by building a new building adjacent here, we'll be able to save costs instead of increase the costs. So with that, we've gone through the design, and we will need that property for parking and kind of that structure itself. And so it's anticipated we would take the courts and the attorney's offices and kind of the sheriff's offices out of this building, the existing, move it into a new building. And so you'd have kind of a separate core building that would be attached adjacent to our existing jail. In exchange for that property, we've gone through and worked with our surveyors. Surveyors created a 1 acre tract of land down at the fairgrounds property, which we could use to trade for the existing road that Monticello owns that goes down through here, kind of terminates at the end or at the entrance of this property. And then we would, in the future, continue that a little bit further down on our property, so we wouldn't have to get the right of way and the easements. It would just be all on county property. During the RV, when we placed the RV pads down at the fairgrounds this last year, we had them stub in power and to a box, a transformer right here that could then take power down to this property. We would still work with the foundation to try to get water and sewer down into this area, but we felt that this, and they also felt that this would be a pretty good trade for commercial property compared to housing, residential housing. Current codes with Monticello, they only allow you, I believe, to go down to 1/2 acre. So it would be anticipated if they do subdivide in the future, you could possibly see 2 homes here instead of 1, but we'll leave that up to the foundation to do any subdividing. We would just essentially carve out 1 acre parcel here and trade them for the parcel there next to the public safety building.
So they're inside the city. The property is the fairground inside the city limit.
It is, yeah,
Okay.
just barely.
Okay.
Right to the north of here is the unincorporated part. The fairgrounds exist within city boundaries.
I have a question. Who will be responsible to remove the building?
They will be in the agreement itself. I placed that as one of the conditions that they would be responsible for the removal
Okay.
of that building. And so we could help. I think if when we got to that point, if we help them out by maybe, and it depends on who does the demolition. Sometimes contractors, growing up for us, we would take the demolition items and bury it on our own property so that we could fill in our own creeks and things like that. We may come back in the future and ask for a reduction in fees for the landfill or something like that, just to kind of help them out.
Mm-hmm.
The foundation, they're not made of money, neither are we, and so it's just trying to help them because in all they're really helping us out by trading that property to us.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
I'm
Just
not
for the
seeing any
record,
others.
do we have any public comments or anyone online to make a comment?
Nobody's online. Nobody's here other than Lori.
So,
Okay.
I guess the only one is Lori. Maybe she can do a public comment. Nobody.
Well, might not be a bad thing. I know it's online.
I make a motion, we come out of public hearing, and move back into our commission meeting.
I
Motion
second the
by
motion.
Commissioner Adams to exit public hearing, seconded by Commissioner Stubbs. It's going to take a vote to exit. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're now back on commission meeting.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the resolution of the governing body of San Juan County authorizing the execution and exchange of county property with and to the San Juan County Community Fund for property located adjacent to the public safety building for a new court and public safety administration building.
Motion to approve resolution by Commissioner Adams,
I second that.
seconded by Commissioner Stubbs. Any other comments or questions before we vote? Okay, let's vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
It's 3 in favor, unanimous approval on the resolution. Okay, that finishes our
So we make a motion to
agenda.
adjourn.
Now we're on to commission reports, unless you want to.
Let's just adjourn.
All right, Commissioner Stubbs, motion to adjourn,
I'll second it.
seconded by Commissioner Adams. All right, let's take a vote.
You sure you want to second it? Just keep it open. This is your last meeting and you're.
Well, we kept it as long as we could.
No.
Look how happy he is. Well, I guess we should have said that with report. I just want to say how appreciative I have been Commissioner Adams for encouraging me to have courage in all those first days. I kind of frightened. It was even more frightening when he took me in front of a bunch of tall commissioners with tall hats, and I was half their size. And they all wearing cowboy hats, and when my family said that, we need to buy you a cowboy hat. Anyway, I feel like it has been a good ride for me, and I appreciate to have got to know you and get to know your amazing wife. I think she is only people that are spouses can appreciate the role, and I think that sometimes I feel sorry for my husband because so much that he can contribute. I told him I wish you were the commissioner, me and Christine can go shopping. We're having so much better. But really, I appreciate and thank you for being so willing to kind of push me. I was in the corner. I mean, 2 days after I finished running, I was there in St. George, seeing I didn't know anything about UAC or anything, but time passes, and now we are some of the older ones. Commissioner Harvey,
Yep.
looking forward to have our new commissioner come and bring out her new ideas, because probably ours are just kind of tired ideas. I don't know.
Same thoughts and sentiment, Commissioner Adams.
Well, these last 2 years have been so much better than the previous 4 that you just have no idea.
I just wish that people would know that and appreciate that, because I thought even if I just run, it was if even they do nothing, it would be better. But I had to get used to people yelling at me when I go to the store now, and it's okay, I guess.
Well, I want to really thank Mac. He's been really an awesome administrator, and I know he gets a lot of guff and stuff, and he's just been awesome. He stepped into this position and had to learn a lot of stuff, and he's done it, and he's spent a lot of extra hours that most people wouldn't probably spend, but I really appreciate Mac.
Thank
You
you.
know, one thing you learn,
Even if he is a Ute fan.
Yeah.
one thing you learned is that by the time the problem come to us,
He's dealt with it for a while.
yeah, and they were not in the department, something that they could have fixed, and that being so big, by the time it come to us, then we end up being, max problem kind of thing. But it is sometimes because I don't know. I just I am grateful, because I don't know how can we run this county just commissioners, and you're the one that can really speak about it, because you have had a history about the other
We used to sit
administrators,
here and we'd get decisions from commissioners, and Commissioner Adams and I would look at each other and wonder what we're gonna do. How do we get out of this, and how do we fix that? And so it's been
4 county administrators I've worked with.
And I am a very mild person, and I go more for the mercy. And it's interesting because not many people know that Mac, he goes more for the mercy, and I just so tired of hearing people complaining about Mac. They want the justice, because I think people forget. Forget what was said in a meeting, forget what the consensus was, forget what the request was, and then I always I go to a meeting and I think, okay, we're gonna say this and this, and Mac said he's good. He's good at being compassion and all this stuff, and I'm ready for somebody to admit some of their wrongdoings, but nobody does. And so, I appreciate that, because I guess in his role he had to be that way, and I appreciate that he is that way, and feeling like, okay, you guys.
well, I think a lot of it's your guys' support. Without that, I'd be pretty lost. And so.
Well, I was just gonna say, you text Mac at 12:30 at night.
Yeah.
He'll text you right back.
Or on Sunday, or
I know.
whenever it is.
Oh, you just said there, I do some stuff, and then I see the report come at 2 o'clock in the morning. Mike have been working on it, and
Working all weekend.
go to sleep. And people say, well, how come he doesn't send early? Well, it's because he's waiting for other people to turn their stuff and have to make copies. And anyway.
Well, the cool thing
And thank
is,
you for Peter for helping with the numbers. And
well, Commissioner Adams
Do you
gonna
want
be
to
on
apply
the
for
state.
the HR?
state
Has you
board
done
of
HR?
the road
Yeah,
now, so-
transportation.
I have,
So we're gonna be okay.
but I like my job.
I know you like your
I'd really like to do my job than the HR job.
Okay, we got a
Did you have a
motion.
friend that would like to apply for it?
Motion and a second, so let's vote to
Huh?
exit. All those in favor to exit?
You need any
Was
phone numbers? call me.
adjourn. Aye.
Oh, okay.
Okay, we just adjourned.
Okay,
Thank you.
2:10 p.m.
very good.
I
Thank
guess
you,
next time
guys.
it's gonna
Thanks
be
Peter
you.
for all your
about
work on
lunch.
this budget.
Sorry about lunch. We didn't anticipate it going this long.
All my kids came home like the day after Christmas, and out of 20 of us, 15 were sick.
Oh, really? Oh, that thing has been going
pneumonia,
around.
One
Yeah.
had the flu, one
Yeah.
had sinus, one had so. I got the throat shot. I'm tired. I mean, all they did is cough on each other. I got home.
But you got them all moved out here and everything?
Did you know anybody that want to apply
Yes,
for
and
HR
so cool.
position?
they drove down.
Up
1
north,
hour, and he goes,
but I don't know anybody.
They will move
Down
here.
here?
Summit News the
Well, I
next
don't
day
know.
or what.
That-
I guess maybe we'll decide.
Just one person doing that.
I mean,
I know. And it's
And
just
sometimes it's
one.
good if it's somebody they don't know.
Can just
I moved
stuff
here.
for.
No, I mean, with HR.
No.
Because
And
we become
antibiotic.
friendly, we start kind of becoming more,
Last week and it's helped. a
So
lot.
I thought Crystal was going part-time. Is she going all the way out then?
I think she's going part, I think we still probably, I don't know what we're gonna decide, but we need to start rethinking something. Because that's so important, that's one that's very important.
Not good.
Yeah.
Okay.
They still live in Europe?
Well, if she's not here, a lot of it goes back on me anyway.
Oh,
So.
okay.
Yeah,
She'd love to go back.
And
I
Matt.
bet.
I mean, yeah,
yeah.
that would be kind of nice. Okay.
Thanks, Matt.
For Matt,
you.
because they used to be
Alright.
here.
You coming on
here, so
the?
people
Are you coming
never
into the
went
swearing
to
in?
come and talk to
Huh?
us.
Are you coming to the swearing
We
in?
finally got a good
When we swear in Lori and
When
that?
is it?
It's just,
The 7th?
Well,
I don't know, I
Yeah.
don't know what it is.
Well,
I'll try.
If not,
in this
I've got to
position,
go
you gotta
with
have
how early
somebody
is
who
it?
has got
it would just be
a
regular
lot
commission
of
meeting at
courage
11.
and a lot of
And so
Yeah.
it's up to you.
strong
You can sleep
I've
in
got to
too.
travel up to
And I
Oh,
think
that's-
we're using
meeting
it
out
Cox's
for
swearing in.
Oh, that's right. That's more important.
counseling.
The, I
Where
sent
they
you that
go,
email
instead of
on
being,
that
okay,
I
what
received
can I do
from
to fix over here to
That
get along
public
kind of
safety
thing?
department
Instead
on the
of
audit. And so
Well,
take a look at that.
we need
and see.
Good.
See where it can go.
How to lead
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I
not
don't
just
have
punt.
much hope.
yeah.
Me
yeah.
neither.
So I don't
And that's
know
I
if
might just
that
respond to
comes
him.
with training,
Take it.
You know,
Take it
or
on.
Last resort, I thought.
but they just
He
keep
called the newspaper.
Yeah.
reporting each other, so if people
Yeah.
end up with humongous
Something
files.
happened then.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, thank you, Matt.
Is that your jacket?
Yes, I better take it, huh? I'll see, I'm known for leather jacket. I was just going to go outside where remember to so cold. I guess I won't see you till next year.
Probably not. Nope. I think I'm gonna take some time off.
Good.
I was gonna say, we're still live. Sorry. I'd like to apologize since everybody will make us so sorry.
So
At least we're not in closed session.
Nope.
That was my favorite.
that happened.
Being on Facebook and calling over to Utah County, being like, this is
You
closed
guys are
session. You guys
still
are still
live."
broadcasting live.
Oh, that's,
Yeah.
I didn't realize we were still alive when we were talking, but it's good.
Yeah. You hadn't adjourned, and so
You're
okay. It's okay.
Well, I'm glad because
It's good
then
to have it on
people-
the record.
Well, it's good to hear people talk about Mac because he knows, the rest of us don't know what it's like.
oh, we're gonna have to go figure out Cindy.
Well, did you remember the conversation? She said she was willing to lose one person. And
Yeah.
it would,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I am so
I didn't think it
shaky.
was gonna take so long. I'm like,
I am so shaky. That's the reason I can't keep talking anymore. I get worn out. I talk too much probably. And I had
Man,
to
I
like,
wish my wife would get that way. Just worn out, just
here's your little
I think probably.
snap.
no, ma'am.
I'll see you next year.
Yes. Happy
I go-
New Year's.
Yeah, you too, feliz año nuevo.
Igualmente, gracias.
I am so tired.
I don't blame you.
My problem is the only time I sit is at nighttime, and every time I sit down, I get sleepy. So I had to tuck myself all the way home. Don't fall asleep, because when I sit down, which is 2 o'clock in the morning, sometimes I will go to sleep. And then I wake up an hour later and I have to go do all the stuff I should have done before I sit down.
Alrighty.
We'll see you, bye.
You keep hearing yourself?
I keep hearing you.
We'll see you. Bye-bye.
Hello there. So even right now, can you hear us? Is she? Okay, let me see what's going on.